Chapter 533. The incident happened when Ding Meng was fighting with the caretaker. His low-light glasses, earpiece communicator, and wrist device were all broken during the battle, and he lost contact with the ground. After Ding Meng lost contact with the caretaker, Junling naturally went to the caretaker. However, after the caretaker's divine light energy was taken away by Little Rascal, Junling was still no match for the caretaker. However, Junling also had a divine light weapon. She couldn't defeat the caretaker, and the caretaker couldn't kill her either. Therefore, Junling decided to go all the way and focused on training on the 10th floor until she defeated the caretaker. The caretaker was an intermediate warlord. Junling spent half a year fighting the caretaker until she successfully passed the level and entered the lower floor. Of course, Junling was basically covered in wounds during the process. However, what was surprising was that Junling had advanced from a beginner combat master to a beginner warlord in just half a year. Moreover, judging from Junling's aura, she was already an intermediate warlord. Her foundation was much deeper than an ordinary intermediate warlord's. Junling was very calm. She always had a calm expression. It's normal. The environment here trains people. Ding Meng couldn't help but sigh at how prescient he was back then. Junling might not have any outstanding advantages, but she had an advantage because she was proficient in all fields. She was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. No matter what kind of environment she was in, she could survive. After Junling went down to the 10th floor, she naturally lost contact with the ground. A year passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Qian Huanyu's huge factory base had been built on the surface. Lu Qing was naturally worried about Ding Meng, so she went underground as well. You guys can actually go down to the 40th floor? Ding Meng was surprised. Lu Qing was definitely not the only one who could break through the 10th floor of the underground. The experts of the 6 major sects had also discovered the multicolored everlasting flame crystals in the crystal wells and crystal tides. Everyone knew that these things were worth many times more than high-grade fire crystals. After staying in this dark underground world for a long time, they had to deal with all kinds of Fire Clan creatures and search for crystal wells on their own. It was inevitable that small conflicts would escalate into big conflicts. Lu Qing had actually managed to survive all kinds of conflicts. Of course, her main purpose was to find Ding Meng. The upper echelons of the 6 major sects unanimously believed that Ding Meng had died in the depths of the Earth's core, but she and Junling refused to believe it no matter what and insisted on continuing to dive. Everyone knew the price of diving, but these 2 women relied on their tenacious willpower to reach the 40th floor, which made them look at them in a new light. After 3 years, the 2 of them had turned into savages. Ding Meng had seen his fair share of beautiful women. Which one of them did not have a high and mighty appearance? Even when Ding Meng had first seen Lu Qing, she had been young and beautiful. She had not looked like this, with her clothes in rags and her body in a mess. However, it was this appearance that made Ding Meng's chest feel warm. From the information that Ding Meng had transmitted to him through the telepathic link, Ding Meng could clearly see that Lu Qing had suffered a lot in order to find him. As a light-speed origin ability user, she had been burned time and time again by the origin flames. She had been defeated by monsters and other experts time and time again. There were a few times when she had encountered people from the Holy War Army and the Blue Light Group. She had almost been captured and raped. If Junling had not arrived in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. In any case, this underground world was completely dark. It was not like they were in the God War Star Zone, where strength spoke louder than words. There was no order to speak of. Ding Meng looked at the dirty Lu Qing. For the first time, he had a new understanding of beautiful women. Ding Meng took a deep breath and pulled her into his arms. Lu Qing, are you willing to come with me? Lu Qing asked curiously. Where are we going? Ding Meng's gaze was resolute. We're going back to the surface. We're leaving this place, leaving the God War's Star Zone. We're going back to the Federation, back to my hometown. Lu Qing stared at him and said in an abnormally resolute tone, I'll go with you, Ding Meng, no matter where you go. Okay. Ding Meng placed his right hand on her exposed back. He exerted a bit of force in his palm, and a healing green essence entered her body. The large and small scars on her body quickly began to heal. From now on, you're mine. The straightforward man's confession had always been rather primitive. Lu Qing's eyes suddenly lit up, and a rare, beautiful smile appeared on her face. I'll listen to you, Ding Ming. No matter where we go in the future, I want to be in the same room as you. You're not allowed to distance yourself from me, Ding Ming nodded. Okay, ahem. The straightforward woman could not hold it in any longer. Ding Ming, can you not talk about having a child here? Even if you want to have a child, wait until we're out of danger. Can you take care of the feelings of a single woman? Looking at Junling's cold expression, Ding Ming could not help but laugh. The warmth in his heart grew stronger. Didn't Junling spend 3 years underground because of Ding Ming? Although the two of them were not in a romantic relationship, at this moment, Junling truly gave him the feeling of family. Junling, Ding Ming looked at her. I'll be your big brother in the future, okay? Junling waved her hand carelessly. That's how it is. What's there to be like? You're so boring, Ding Ming. You don't even know how to coax a girl. It was impossible for little rascal to not show up at this time. Yes. You're absolutely right. Ding Ming, this big fool, is such an idiot. But that's good too. This time, there's a bed warmer. You didn't come down for nothing. Let me calculate. In the future, among Lu Qing, Dai Yi, Lan Bing, who will be the main wife? Who will be the second wife? Who will be the mistress? Do you want to learn from the ancient emperors? I'll arrange for you to flip the cards. Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. Little rascal, can you be any more boring? Little rascal argued. What did I say wrong? Xiao Ai's tone was deep. Very good. Junling spoke again. Ding Ming, it'll be a bit difficult to go back now. Her gaze fell on a mass of chaos in front of her. Ding Ming had long since sensed that in addition to Lu Qing and Junling, there were several other powerful auras of origin energy in front of them. What's going on here? Ding Ming asked. Lu Qing hurriedly explained. The Blue Light Corporation's subordinates came from Platinum. They originally came down to find you, but we found a lot of 5-colored crystals, so, although her words were simple, Ding Ming understood the meaning behind them. He had already offended the Blue Light Corporation back on Azure Tree Planet. Now that they came down to find him, they were definitely waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. In the end, they didn't find him. Instead, they found Junling and Lu Qing monopolizing the crystal well. Naturally, they wanted to think about the crystals. It's one thing to block my path, but you want to touch my companions? Dream on. A cold light flashed through Ding Ming's eyes. According to Junling's message, the people on the other side weren't weak. One of them was a guy called Bai Zheng, who was a direct descendant of Platinum. This guy was already over 150 years old. In the God War Starfield, he was still elegant and graceful. However, after coming to the underground world, his nature was exposed. There were a few times when he actually wanted to touch Lu Qing. If he didn't have such thoughts, Lu Qing and Junling wouldn't have been able to survive until now. Because Bai Zheng was pressuring them step by step, he didn't intend to kill them. He wanted to force Lu Qing until she had no strength to resist. Only then would he be able to make his move. Ding Ming immediately became expressionless. Let's go and meet him. Junling was more familiar with Ding Ming's habits. When Ding Ming had this kind of expression, it usually meant that he wanted to kill. However, Lu Qing suddenly pulled him back, her face full of worry. Ding Ming, don't go. Let's slow him down and think of a way. That guy is very powerful. He's one of the 10 aces of the Blue Light Group. In Lu Qing's mind, Ding Ming was only a general-level powerhouse. Only by pushing his origin energy to the limit could he reach the Battle Monarch level. He might not have any chance of winning against Bai Zheng. As for the top 10 aces, Ding Ming had never heard of them. Anyway, the result was the same whether she had heard of them or not. Ding Ming took off the rainbow backpack on her waist and handed it to Junling. I still have some equipment in my backpack. Put on your armor. The intention of this move was obvious. Junling and Junling were almost naked. Since Ding Ming recognized Lu Qing as his woman, he naturally wouldn't let her meet others in her current state. This meant that Ding Ming really wanted to meet Bai Zheng. Compared to Lu Qing's worry, Junling's face was relaxed. It's fine. Ding Meng is back. No matter how strong that old man is, can he be stronger than Ding Meng? Lu Qing thought about it and felt that this made sense. If she didn't have confidence in Ding Meng, then who else would have confidence in Ding Meng? After passing through this cave, they arrived at another cave that was even larger. The crystal well in the center still seemed very calm. It seemed that the crystal tide hadn't arrived yet. There were a total of 5 people surrounding the crystal well. Ding Meng recognized Bai Zheng at a glance. The people of the blue light group all had one thing in common. They often wore formal clothes, mostly suits and windbreakers. The 5 men in front of him were the same. However, 4 of their suits had long been melted to nothing. Only a short, middle-aged man was still wearing a white shirt. Although the shirt was stained with many stains, it was enough to prove that this person's strength was extraordinary. The origin energy he stimulated could form a defensive layer on the surface of his body, preventing him from being burned by the surrounding flames. This Bai Zheng's hair was a little white, and his movements seemed a little sluggish. However, it was impossible for him not to sense Ding Meng and the other 2 walking out. You're finally willing to come out? Bai Zheng smiled sinisterly. His small eyes stared straight at Lu Qing's towering chest. President Lu, have you thought it through? Ding Meng stepped forward and said, What do you mean? Bai Zheng was a little surprised. He carefully sized up Ding Meng. I was wondering who it was. So it's Ding Meng from the Long Voyage Alliance. No wonder you have the guts to come here. Ding Meng said without batting an eyelid. It seems like you've been waiting for the 2 of them here. A playful expression floated across Bai Zheng's face. President Lu is my woman. What's wrong with me waiting for her? You seem to be mistaken about something. Ding Meng responded indifferently. Lu Qing is my woman. She should come with me. Bai Zheng wasn't angry. He looked at Ding Meng meaningfully. Kid, do you know who you're talking to? Ding Meng sneered. Even if Bai Jinlai was in that position, I would still speak in the same tone. Do you have a problem? Chapter 534. Bai Zheng looked at Ding Meng mockingly. Kid, you're interesting. It's good to be young. The ignorant are fearless. Ding Meng ignored him and waved at the 2 girls. Let's go. Junling and Lu Qing immediately followed closely behind him. This time, Bai Zheng and the others felt like they had been slapped in the face. Beauty Lu was really willing to go with Ding Meng. The so-called reason was not fought, but facts spoke louder than words. Before they could take a few steps, a shadow flashed by. 3 shirtless men rushed up and blocked the 3 of them. You want to leave? Have you asked Master Bai? Ding Meng stopped. I advise you not to stop me. Bai Zheng walked up unhurriedly. Kid, where do you want to go with my girl? Back to the Long Voyage Alliance? Ding Meng sighed. I find that the people of the Blue Light Group are all the same. You usually look dignified, but in private, your brains are full of thieves and prostitutes. That Bo Ting is like that, and so are you. Bai Zheng said proudly, so what? The mountain below is high, and the emperor is far away. No one can control me. If I have my eyes on someone, don't even think about running away. The only thing I haven't tasted in the Water Cherry Society is these few presidents. I really want to have a taste. Lu Qing could not help but say, Despicable, you shameless guy. To think I respected you so much. I didn't expect you to be a beast in human face. Bai Zheng smiled sinisterly again. That's right, I'm shameless. After I'm done with you, I'll let my brothers have a taste. Aren't you usually high and mighty? You don't care about anyone. I like to see how long you can be arrogant this time. Ding Meng couldn't help but laugh. According to what you're saying, whoever has the biggest fist can do whatever they want down here. Bai Zheng looked at him with interest. It seems that you're very smart. No wonder President Lu likes a pretty boy like you. Lu Qing was also so angry that she laughed. That's right. I just took a fancy to this gigolo. What about it? You can't be envious. You can only stare. Old thing, I'm someone you'll never get. Bai Zheng couldn't be bothered to waste his breath. He gently waved his hand. Go. Unfortunately, the 3 half-naked men could not do anything, because at the same time that he waved his hand, Ding Meng also waved his hand casually. The 3 men immediately flew into the air as if they were possessed and hovered in mid-air. as Ding Meng's eyes slowly exerted force. No matter how hard the three of them struggled, their bodies couldn't help but float above the crystal well. When an intermediate warlock dealt with these origin ability users who didn't have any telekinesis, those below the monarch rank didn't even have the ability to resist. Bai Zhang's expression changed. "Brat, what are you trying to do?" Ding Meng laughed. "What I want to do? I want to do an experiment to see if the human body can withstand a temperature of 100,000 degrees. You're courting death." The remaining man rushed forward fiercely. This guy was not very fast, but when he exploded, he set off a large flame in the surroundings. His aura was very vigorous. He was probably a beginner warlord with a strong body. To be honest, this kind of strength could be considered quite outstanding in the God War Star Zone. However, in Ding Meng's eyes, this kind of reckless charge was purely looking for trouble. "You go and experience it too." This time, Ding Meng didn't even bother waving his hand. The man automatically flew up into the air. Bai Zhang's expression sank. "It seems that I misjudged you. I didn't expect you to be a warlock." Ding Meng calmly said, "There are still many things that you misjudge." Bai Zhang said, "But I won't misjudge the people I like. My woman won't be able to escape." As he said this, he spread out his hanging left hand. His 5 fingers twisted into a claw, and after gently grabbing, he suddenly thrust it forward. A thin and sharp blue spike shot out from his palm, bringing with it an extremely cold aura as it flew towards Ding Meng. This blue spike was naturally an ice spike that had been tempered with ice-type origin energy. Under normal circumstances, the larger, more and colder the form of the dark ice force was, the higher the realm of the user. However, this small spike was the opposite. It was fine, sharp, and shiny, but wherever it passed, the surrounding flames were extinguished by the waves of air it emitted. It was clear that the dark ice force had been repeatedly tempered. But so what? Ding Meng stood in place without moving. He stiffly allowed the ice spike to fly towards him. With a pu sound, it hit his chest, and then the ice spike sank into his heart. This scared Junling and Lu Qing quite a bit. Bai Zhang laughed disdainfully. "You really are a pretty boy. You can't even see my move clearly. Lie down. Killing trash like you is really a waste of my strength." His smile froze 2 seconds later because Ding Meng laughed again. "What 10 aces? It's not even a drizzle." As he spoke, he moved his feet and slowly walked towards the other party. "You." Bai Zhang's jaw almost dropped. "This is impossible. Not to mention him." Even Junling and Lu Qing felt that it was impossible. Everyone saw clearly that the sharp ice spike had hit Ding Meng's heart. Ding Meng didn't use his origin energy at all, nor did he make any defenses. Could it be that he had eaten the other party's dark ice force? Raw? What a joke. After 3 years of cultivation, Ding Meng's body couldn't even withstand a temperature of 200,000 degrees, let alone a small ice spike. Of course, Bai Zhang's dark ice force was really good. For someone with the ice element to be able to cultivate to this level, he indeed had the ability to force Lu Qing and Junling to this point. "Now, do you still think she's your woman?" Ding Meng sneered as he walked towards Bai Zhang. Bai Zhang was shocked and angry. He could already feel Ding Meng's aura skyrocketing. "You're courting death." After he finished speaking, he decisively raised both of his palms. Then, there was no then. Ding Meng would not stupidly exchange blows with you like he did in the past. In these 3 years of cultivation, his comprehension of martial arts had reached a new height. A true expert would not give you a chance. They would not let you make a move at all. As soon as Bai Zhang raised his palms, Ding Meng appeared behind him. Ding Meng struck Bai Zhang's temple with a backhand chop. Bai Zhang's entire body fell limply to the ground. He didn't even have time to react. "You, what did you do to me?" Bai Zhang lay paralyzed on the ground. To his horror, he discovered that a scorching hot energy had drilled into his brain. If this energy could be described, it was like a ferocious fighting squad rampaging through his body. The ice origin energy in his body was disoriented, and he wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. When Ding Meng's chop hit him, he released a pure heat energy. This energy instantly spread throughout his entire body. The contest between ice and fire was simple and violent. Whoever was stronger could do whatever they wanted. However, the main reason was that a battle monarch wasn't so easy to kill. Ding Ming's actions were simply to stagnate the circulation of origin energy. If an ice origin energy user couldn't circulate smoothly, then he was doomed on the 40th floor. If he was lucky, then he might survive. If he wasn't, then he wouldn't be able to recover on his own for a long time and would automatically turn to ash. As for the 4 battle generals in the air, they didn't have a choice. Under the forceful pull of telekinesis, the 4 of them simultaneously let out terrified howls. These howls were mercilessly swallowed up by the lava at the bottom of the crystal well 3 seconds later. The 4 of them turned into smoke, leaving not even a trace behind. Seeing Ding Ming knock down a battle monarch with just a wave of his hand and destroy 4 battle generals at the same time, Lu Qing was truly shocked. She could only desperately cover her mouth to prevent herself from screaming. Junling was also extremely shocked. Could it be that Ding Ming had encountered another fortuitous encounter in these 3 years? The water droplet suddenly sighed. What a pity! Xiao AI didn't understand. What's a pity? The water droplet said. Ding Ming probably used his divine light weapon to absorb the energy of those 4 battle generals. I just happen to be lacking this kind of energy. No, Little Rascal decisively rejected. The water droplet said in surprise, why not? Little Rascal said, divine light weapons can't be used lightly. It's fine if they don't use them, but if they do, they'll definitely kill. On the Mao planet, the weapons of generals can't be used casually. This is a famous saying in the human world, don't kill nameless people. The water droplet was a bit helpless. All right then, I'll wait for the next opportunity. While the 3 of them were discussing this, Bai Zheng, who was lying on the ground, was truly scared. You can't kill me. Ding Ming couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him, but Bai Zheng was scared out of his wits. President Bai is my uncle. If you kill me, you'll become the target of the Blue Light Group. The Blue Light Group is definitely not an organization that the Long Voyage Alliance can afford to offend. Ding Ming had already turned around and walked towards the entrance of the cave. However, just as Bai Zheng let out a slight sigh of relief, Junling had already walked to his side and looked at him expressionlessly. Just because he didn't kill you doesn't mean you won't die. Only then did Bai Zheng realize that Junling was holding a sharp sword in his hand. What do you want? The Iron Lady never gave you any nonsense. With a flash of blue light, Junling raised his sword and chopped down. Blood splattered like a water bag as Bai Zheng's head was chopped off and rolled to the side. This is the result of trying to touch my sister-in-law. After saying this, Junling kicked out, and the bloody head was kicked into the crystal well. This time, even a mortal would be unable to save him. In the face of Junling's coldness, Lu Qing didn't feel the slightest bit cruel. The 2 of them had already formed a deep relationship through the battles where they took care of each other along the way. There was a sense of sister-like dependence on each other. Now that Ding Ming had personally admitted that Lu Qing was his, Junling naturally addressed her as brother and sister-in-law. Lu Qing ran over and affectionately held Junling's arm. Let's go. Junling raised his head and glanced at Ding Ming's back in the distance. This guy is too soft-hearted. He doesn't know how to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. TSK, TSK. Little Rascal said. This girl, I didn't know she was so wild. Xiao AI said. You have to get used to her savagery. She wants people's lives at the drop of a hat. Lu Qing coughed dryly. He's now so powerful that it's unimaginable. Naturally, we women have to clean things up. You're getting into character pretty quickly. Junling was a little speechless. However, time was of the essence now. Returning to the surface was the most important thing. After the 3 of them left, not long after, the headless corpse's wrist device on the ground automatically lit up green. This was the communication channel automatically activated. Junling said that he wanted to eliminate the roots, but in fact, he hadn't cleaned it up completely. This kind of wrist device from the God War starfield would automatically send a quantum location after the wearer lost his life. The ground's radar would definitely receive it. Chapter 535. When Ding Ming came out of the quenching pool on the 10th floor, he discovered that the white light in the thick fog had disappeared. Junling and Lu Qing were no strangers to this white light. It was the Guardian's flame form, and the disappearance of the white light meant that the Guardian was also gone. Junling took the initiative to explain, "I know about this Guardian. We can't kill it. Even if we defeat it, its giant form will condense into a mist state and wait for the next challenger." Ding Ming muttered, "It's impossible that it wasn't truly destroyed." This question was asked by Little Rascal. Little Rascal immediately explained, "There are two possibilities. The first is that we killed him because we have the divine light weapon. The second possibility is that he is a battle saint level expert. That kind of person can destroy the mist-like flames." Battle Sage? Ding Ming thought that on Planet Extreme Flame, there were probably no more than 5 people who could break through to the Battle Sage level. Even in the Holy Grail Federation, where experts were as common as clouds, this level of existence could be counted on one hand. At this moment, Ding Ming suddenly raised his head, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Following his gaze, Junling and Lu Qing's faces also darkened. They saw several figures walking out of the thick fog. These were none other than Yu, Wen Kaiming, and Wen Yu. Seeing Lu Qing and Junling, he was also a little surprised. "You guys actually didn't die?" Lu Qing sneered and asked in return, "Secretary, you seem to think that I should be dead?" Yu's eyes flashed. "I received a notice earlier that we lost contact with President Bai's nephew, Bai Zheng. The wristwatch automatically sent a quantum location. I'm afraid something happened to Uncle Bai down there." Lu Qing couldn't help but ask, "What does something happen to him have to do with us?" He was also calm. "Based on the distance of the signal received by the radar, Uncle Bai should have lost contact on the 39th floor. If we calculate the time, if you guys came here from the 39th floor 6 hours ago, the timing would match." That was why this kid could become a big-shot secretary. Not only was his head clear, he was also very meticulous. Lu Qing smiled. "Secretary, you mean that something happened to Bai Zheng, and we can't get away with it?" Yu's face darkened. "That's very possible." Lu Qing sighed. "Do you think we can be Bai Zheng's match with our strength?" Yu was stunned. Lu Qing was at most a warlord. How could she be compared to a warlord like Bai Zheng? When Kaiming suddenly stood up, "Whether or not it's related to you, you're at least suspicious. You should go back to the surface and explain to the higher-ups clearly." Although he was talking, he was observing Ding Ming from the corner of his eye. This man had been gone for 3 years. Didn't everyone agree that he was dead? How could he still be alive? Lu Qing frowned and said, "Do you have the right to speak here?" When Kaiming stammered, "No," Lu Qing scolded, "Since you don't, then please stand further away." He replied with a sullen face, "But he's right." Lu Qing said, "Then what do you want me to do? All of you have to go back with me." He glanced at Ding Ming, "Including you. After all, you're a member of Long Voyage Alliance." Ding Ming suddenly separated the 2 women and slowly walked forward. "Bai Zheng is already dead. You." Yu and the other 2 widened their eyes. Looking at the 3 people's dumbfounded expressions, Ding Ming continued to drop the bomb. "I killed him." Even if Ding Ming didn't look like he was lying, Yu and the other 2 refused to believe this news. When you suddenly sneered, "Ding Ming, I know you're very powerful, but you said that you could kill a warlord like Uncle Bai. Even if you're bragging, you shouldn't be bragging like this." Ding Ming ignored him and stared at Yu. He knew that Yu didn't come with good intentions. He definitely had an ulterior motive. Ding Ming continued, "You definitely won't believe it, but Secretary, he definitely will. Because Secretary, he is a smart person. Smart people won't do stupid things." It was hard for everyone to understand this, but Yu's words were shocking. "Yes, I believe you. Absolutely. This." When Kaiming and his son turned their heads in shock. They didn't know why Yu would say something like this at a time like this. Ding Ming suddenly waved at Lu Qing. "Lu Qing, come over here." Lu Qing immediately walked to his side obediently. Ding Ming said meaningfully, "I finally understand why someone like Bai Zheng had the guts to touch you." Lu Qing was shocked. "Why?" Ding Ming said, "It's not because he's strong. It's because you've been removed from the Water Cherry Association. Me? Lu Qing looked at Ding Ming in disbelief. How is that possible? Ding Ming suddenly smiled and pointed at Yu. You can ask him if you don't believe me. He's a smart person. He'll definitely tell the truth at a time like this. Lu Qing looked at Yu in shock. What's going on? Yu's face was terrifyingly dark. He was silent for a long time before he said in a hoarse voice, Yes. President Liu, you've been removed from the Water Cherry Association. This was a decision made by the higher-ups of the Alliance a year ago. Why? Lu Qing couldn't accept this news. Yu said, because you didn't listen to advice 2 years ago and insisted on coming down to find a dead person. You didn't care about the big picture. President Lin and the others naturally had to remove you. What kind of ridiculous reason was this? She was expelled from the Water Cherry Association just because of this? Lu Qing found it hard to understand. Impossible. The president has always been very good to me. How could she? Ding Ming suddenly sighed. I've been down here for 3 years. When I saw Bai Zheng on the 40th floor, I should have known that many things were happening above ground. Lu Qing couldn't help but ask, What's the problem? Ding Ming said, Since there's a factory above ground that can produce crystals, the multicolored eternal flame crystals underground must be the Alliance's higher goal. That's why it's normal for us to see Bai Zheng. His real goal is to find multicolored eternal flame crystals. Everyone listened quietly. They didn't understand what he meant. Ding Ming sighed. At this time, who has no value above ground? Ding Ming suddenly understood. No wonder I couldn't get in touch with the Conqueror 2 years ago. Ding Ming looked at Yu. Let me ask you something. Are Miss Chu, Xinjie, and Xing Yi still alive? If they aren't, then the 3 of you don't need to be alive right now. Lu Qing immediately understood. The Conqueror was an existence that the Alliance looked up to, whether it was the starship itself or the various manufacturing technologies. However, the person the Conqueror relied on the most was Ding Ming. This was because Ding Ming came from the Holy Grail Federation. As long as Ding Ming was there, the Alliance would have to consider the attitude of the Long Voyage Alliance and the Water Cherry Association. After all, they were on Ding Ming's side. Moreover, everyone had seen how Shang Tianfeng treated Chu Shaoqing. However, Ding Ming had disappeared underground for 3 years. No matter how patient a person was, they would think that Ding Ming was dead. The logic was there. Even a warlord like Bai Zheng could search all the way to the 40th floor, but he still couldn't find Ding Ming. It was almost 100% certain that Ding Ming had died in the terrifying sea of fire under Planet Extreme Flame. Understanding this key point, Lu Qing couldn't help but tremble with anger. Despicable and shameless. Without Officer Chu's starship, it would be difficult for us to even reach Planet Extreme Flame. You guys know how to burn the bridge after crossing the river. After using them, you actually want to rob the Conqueror. When did the Alliance become like this? Ding Ming waved his hand, indicating that she should calm down. Let me ask you, who is the one who wants to rob the Conqueror? Ding Ming stared at Yu. Yu sneered. You should be able to guess. Ding Ming suddenly sighed again. It's definitely not the Holy Grail Army, and it's definitely not the Blue Light Group. Ding Ming asked curiously, Why are you so sure? Ding Ming said, Because they don't know anything about starships and technology, and they won't be interested in it. Lu Qing was shocked. Could it be the Long Voyage Alliance's own people? Ding Ming said expressionlessly. In fact, it's very easy to understand. If you're obsessed with swordsmanship and a peerless sword is placed in front of you right now, you will get it no matter what. The Long Voyage Alliance studied for many years before they came up with a starship like Sovereign, but Xinjie built the Conqueror in only a few years. It would be strange if the Long Voyage Alliance didn't covet it. Yu said in a low voice. To be honest, when President Dong Yu made this suggestion, even we were surprised. Lu Qing's hands and feet were cold. It was not that she had never experienced the evilness of human nature, but she really felt that she had underestimated the selfishness of human beings if President Dong Yu, who was usually gentle and polite, was also such an animal. Ding Ming was very calm. If I guessed correctly, the other higher-ups quickly agreed to his idea and took control of the Conqueror. There was no need to explain. Even Ding Meng understood. The biggest problem of the War of Gods alliance was energy. Now that they had arrived at planet Extreme Flame, the energy problem had been solved to a large extent. Then, looking at the future, interstellar navigation technology would be the most important thing. So it was absolutely necessary to take control of the Conqueror, or at least Xinjie. He said, but there were also people who objected. Ding Meng was a little surprised. Oh, who? He said, Captain Kataga and President Dong. They think this is inappropriate. Hearing this answer, Ding Meng was slightly relieved. After all, he had not misjudged Kataga. Kataga was saved by him from the Greenwood faculty. From the first time he saw Kataga, he knew that this person was not a bad person and would not have any evil intentions. He sighed. But it's a pity. Ding Meng stared at him. What's a pity? Ding Meng sighed again. There's no need to ask. They're probably dead by now. Lu Qing's eyes widened. How can that be? Ding Meng was expressionless. You should be able to figure out the reason. As the vice president of the Water Sakura Society, Lu Qing was naturally familiar with the thoughts of the upper echelons of the alliance. Controlling the Conqueror, Chu Shaoqing, and the others was, to a certain extent, for the future of Starlink. If anyone jumped out to oppose this, they would be going against the entire alliance, and they would be dead for sure. This was what he meant by considering the big picture. In the face of huge interests and survival, any morality and conscience would become insignificant. Lu Qing even thought deeper. Although Lin Aoshue's Water Cherry Society supported Ding Meng, she was forced to agree with the opinions of the upper echelons no matter how unwilling she was. Not to mention, her ally, Long Voyage Alliance, was the initiator. This was a very awkward situation. Ding Meng continued to ask, who killed Captain Kataga and Dong Yi's commander? He refused to answer this question. Ding Meng said, it doesn't matter. I'll find out sooner or later. Chapter 536. Lu Qing frowned and said, but I still don't understand why the president would remove me from the Water Cherry Association. Ding Meng's eyes flashed, but he didn't answer the question. There had to be a deeper reason. He sneered. You're the leading actress of the Water Cherry Association, but you're having an affair with someone from the Holy Grail Federation. You're ruining the Alliance's image. Lu Qing was so angry that she laughed. Do you still have any image to speak of? He said, everyone knows that you're interested in Ding Meng. Since you insist on chasing a dead man, President Lin naturally has to remove you from the association. Lu Qing stopped laughing. I understand now. It's Zhu Peng's doing. Ding Meng had already read the new information through the mental link. Zhu Peng was the vice commander of the Holy War Army. He had always admired Lu Qing's beauty, but Lu Qing didn't like him, so he had always been watching in the dark. However, Lin Aoshue wanted to marry into the Holy War Army, but she didn't say anything because of Lu Qing's wishes. After all, the Water Cherry Association was weaker than the Holy War Army, so it was normal for Lin Aoshue to have such selfish motives. However, Lu Qing's thoughts were all on Ding Meng, which made Qing Zhongfeng very unhappy. If Lu Qing was removed from the Water Cherry Association in name, at least the Water Cherry Association wouldn't have to bear too much pressure. However, it was too early to say whether Lin Aoshue's decision was right or wrong, because Ding Meng suddenly had a feeling that the situation on the surface was far more complicated than he imagined. He said coldly, actually, Uncle Zhu is a good person. Lu Qing's voice was even colder. Yes, I admit that. President Zhu is a good person, but unfortunately, he's not my cup of tea. I don't like him. He sighed. Then it's your own bad taste. Lu Qing sneered. You want me to marry an old man who's 100 years older than me? What a joke. Ding Meng stepped forward and said, I have one last question. Are Chu Shaoqing and Xing Yi still alive? He was silent. It was obvious that he was hesitant to answer. Ding Meng suddenly smiled. It seems that they're still alive. He was a little surprised by Ding Meng's prediction. How did you know? Ding Meng said. How could someone who could do such a thing not have a meticulous mind? As long as the higher-ups of the Alliance aren't fools, we have to keep them alive. The reason is simple. None of you know if I'm really dead or not. What if I come back? He Yu sneered. Even if you come back, you can't change the current situation. Ding Meng said proudly. That's right. I may not be able to change the situation on the ground, but I can still change the situation in front of us. When Kai Ming and his son suddenly became nervous. Ding Meng, what are you trying to do? Ding Meng's eyes glowed fiercely. Do you believe me if I say that I want you to die? When Kai Ming and his son had experienced Ding Meng's power, so they were particularly afraid of Ding Meng. When you mustered up her courage and said, Secretary, he is here. Do you dare to act recklessly? Do you really want to become enemies with the Crusade Army and the entire alliance? You're a member of our God War Alliance. Ding Meng nodded. Yes, I am rebelling. Right now, the entire alliance is my enemy. Since you dare to touch Miss Chu and Xinjia, then prepare to die. He suddenly stretched out his hand and opened his palm. Wen Yu, who was 10 meters away from Ding Meng, was lifted off the ground uncontrollably and automatically flew towards Ding Meng. Pa! Wen Yu's chest was firmly sucked in by Ding Meng's palm. What followed next was a hair-raising scene. Wen Yu couldn't even scream as her entire body turned into a ball of red flames. The flames rapidly shrank into a ball of light and then disappeared without a trace. This all happened in just 5 seconds. Little Rascal immediately cheered. Not bad, not bad. Ding Meng, your diamond star fusing art can finally melt people. The water droplet was a bit envious. Ding Meng, can you give me that ball of energy? Xiao AI said, I was going to give it to you anyway. Ding Meng doesn't care about this bit of origin energy at all. While the three of them were discussing, He Yu and Wen Kai Ming were completely stupefied. What kind of terrifying power was this? He could melt people and even absorb them. What kind of cruel method was this? He had mercilessly turned a person's life to ash with a raise of his hand. They had always thought that Ding Meng was thin and weak, short and small. They didn't expect him to be so vicious when it came to killing people. It was like burning paper. Yu. Wen Kai Ming continuously retreated. His own son was gone just like that. His fear far exceeded his grief. Ding Meng didn't lower his hand. He only raised his head slightly and glared at Wen Kai Ming with a sharp gaze. Don't, Wen Kai Ming wailed. Unfortunately, it was useless. He automatically flew up and fell into Ding Meng's palm. With a bang, he turned into a human-shaped flame. A few seconds later, he turned into ashes. Some residue seemed to fall from Ding Meng's palm. Ding Meng clapped his hands and turned to look at He Yu. You're quite calm. He Yu had been standing there without moving. He indeed looked very calm, but his heart was in turmoil. He knew that Ding Meng was powerful, but he didn't expect Ding Meng to be this powerful. Even the leaders of the 6 major sects might not have such a deep spiritual foundation as Ding Meng. He could melt people into nothing with a single move. Lu Qing and Junling finally realized why He Yu had to tell the truth when Ding Meng asked him. If he didn't answer honestly, he would die. He had seen through this long ago. He Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. Miss Chu, Officer Xing, Mr. Xinjia, and the others are still alive. Ding Meng nodded. Yes, as I said, if they're not alive, there's no need for you to live either. That's why you should give me a way out. After saying this, He Yu felt a burning sensation on his face. As Qing Zhongfeng's confidential secretary, he was above everyone else. He was respected everywhere in the God War starfield. However, what he said now was no different from begging for mercy on his knees, begging Ding Meng to spare his life. If he could go back alive today, he would return this humiliation 1,000 times over. Ding Meng looked at him coldly. Since you've been honest, I'll give you a chance. I'll let you escape. I promise I won't chase you for 5 minutes. As soon as he said this, He Yu shot forward like lightning and punched Ding Meng in the head. This was a real punch without any fancy tricks. The power of this punch was quite shocking. The air around them rippled, and the origin energy flames were scattered. Even Junling and Lu Qing couldn't help but cover their faces with their hands. This wave of air was quite piercing. However, the next moment, He Yu felt as if all the blood in his body had frozen. He even felt as if time had stopped and his breathing had stopped. Ding Meng didn't even move. He just stared straight at him. He had used all his strength to throw this punch. He didn't know how many years he had practiced this punch. He was so familiar with it that he wouldn't miss it even if he closed his eyes. Normally, the power of this punch could even turn a small ship into scrap metal. However, when this punch landed on Ding Meng's head, his fist turned into paper. In fact, it was even weaker than paper. Ding Meng's strength had far exceeded his understanding. At this moment, his mind was blank. Then, he felt as if he was flying. His entire body was limp, and he couldn't even muster up any strength. He couldn't even see how Ding Meng had attacked. A cold blue light flashed in midair. With a kacha sound, He body was cut into two halves on the spot. When the corpse fell, Junling's feet also fell to the ground. His battle blade was already dyed red with blood. Lu Qing looked at Hiyu's body and said with some regret, he was originally very talented. Ding Meng understood her feelings and explained calmly. Even if he had told the truth, he would still have to die. Lu Qing nodded. If Hiyu wasn't dead, the Alliance would soon know that Ding Meng had returned. When the time came, they would definitely respond. I just don't understand. You clearly told him to run first. Why didn't he run? Junling put away his warblade. Ding Meng said, he was indeed very smart, because he knew that he couldn't escape. Junling looked at the body on the ground thoughtfully. That's right. Wild beasts will always fight back before they die. Running for his life in vain will only end up worse. Lu Qing shook her head and sighed. If he really ran back, it would be no different from being dead. In the future, if someone said that Qing Zhongfeng's secretary ran back, he might as well be dead. Ding Meng turned around and stared at her. Are you afraid? Lu Qing sighed. You killed so many experts of the Holy War Army, and I'm now one of your people. You're lying if you say that I'm not afraid. However, your business is my business. What do you want to do next? Ding Meng said, I want you and Junling to go back to the ground and surrender. Let them lock you two up first. Junling frowned. Aren't we going to kill them? Ding Meng said seriously, don't worry. This is the safest way. I can guarantee that they won't touch you. If you go up with me, you'll immediately become a target. Lu Qing immediately understood Ding Meng's idea. They were now very close to the ground. Once they landed on the ground, they would definitely be discovered by the radar. If she and Ding Meng went together, they would be too big of a target. If she and Ding Meng went first, they would successfully attract the attention of the Alliance. Ding Meng would then sneak into the dark. Now, the ground still didn't know what was going on down there. During this time, they should take the initiative to contact the Water Cherry Society. No matter how worried Lin Aoshua was, he wouldn't send them to their deaths. Although it was very risky, they had no other choice. Lu Qing took the initiative to walk to Ding Meng's side and gently hugged him. Her tone was very firm. I'll go. Ding Meng pressed her soft shoulders. Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you. I promise. Junling didn't hesitate at all. He nodded and said, let's go. Chapter 537. On the surface of planet Extreme Flame, the Conqueror was still in the same place. 3 years had passed, but the starship was still brand new. The metal on the surface had not been damaged by the high temperature at all. With the Conqueror as the center, a huge cluster of factories had been built. Transport ships of all sizes were taking off and landing constantly. This place was clearly taking shape and had become a medium-sized energy supply base. The command center was still busy, but the Imperial military personnel had all been replaced by members of the Long Voyage Alliance. They were busy in front of the control panels. President, the radar has found a new target. The coordinates are 30D, 50A. It's President Liu and Junling, a worker said. Lin Aoshua and the others in the lounge were so shocked that they immediately stood up. The two of them had gone down for more than 2 years. Su Lingwei couldn't help but rushed to the control panel. Quick, where are they? Send a lifeboat to pick them up. Wait. Li Qingfeng stopped her from the sofa. Lu Qing is no longer a member of the Water Cherry Society. Although he was speaking, he glanced at Bai Jinlai, who was sitting on the side. His meaning was clear. Several groups of people had gone down without any news. Bai Zhang's status was unknown. Now, The person who had been missing for a long time had returned. Bai Zheng and he used disappearance might have something to do with Lu Qing. Bai Jinlai said unhurriedly. White Tiger. A burly man next to him said, Go and pick up Miss Lu and Miss June. Pick them up instead of invite them up. The meaning was obvious. Lin Aoshue said decisively, I don't think that's necessary. I'll go myself. President Lin, let me send someone. Dong Yu slowly walked over from the other side of the sofa. The big shots were worried about the other party's people going to pick up Lu Qing. If Dong Yu had to do it, the Long Voyage Alliance's people would be more suitable. An hour later, Lu Qing and Liang Yi appeared in the command center in ragged clothes. Seeing the sisters who used to be like brothers in the past become like this, Su Lingwei and Liang Yi quickly went to help Lu Qing. Qing, how did you end up like this? Su Lingwei said with heartache. Lu Qing waved her hand and stared at the people in the lounge. Sister Shui, why did you remove my name? Although she was clear about this fact, she still had to ask Lin Aoshue personally before she was satisfied. Lin Aoshue's expression kept changing, but Fong Ming sneered disdainfully. Removing your name is for your own good. What's good about it? Lu Qing asked. Fong Ming said, Lu Qing, let me ask you, have you seen Bai Zheng down there? At the mention of Bai Zheng, Lu Qing got angry. So what if I've seen him? So what if I haven't? This answer left Fong Ming speechless. If she had really met Bai Zheng, would Lu Qing have come back alive? Even if they could survive, they would probably be ruined. There were some things and rules that all the big shots were aware of. But now that Lu Qing had returned alive, it was very likely that Bai Zheng had died down there. But that was the problem. Could Lu Qing and Junling work together to kill Bai Zheng? That was definitely a fantasy. Qing, come here. Lin Aoshue beckoned. Lu Qing walked into the rest area. Sister Shui. Lin Aoshue's expression was complicated. Qing, let me ask you. You must answer me honestly. Where is Ding Ming? As expected, this was the question she was really concerned about. Lu Qing could not help but ask, Why are you asking about Ding Ming? Is he very important? Lin Aoshue looked at her meaningfully. Is he not important to you? In the distance, Jun Ling suddenly said coldly, Ding Ming is dead. Dead? Lin Aoshue was stunned. Jun Ling nodded and said, Yes, he's dead. He was burned to death by the flames. This news did not come as a surprise to the other big shots, but Lin Aoshue showed a thoughtful expression. Lu Qing said, Sister Shui, I heard that you dealt with Miss Chu in her group? Yes. Lin Aoshue did not hide it. Lu Qing did not understand. Why? Li Qingfeng answered coldly. That's not something you should be concerned about. Bai Jinlai said, The two of you are badly injured. Men, send them to rest. Although it was said that they were going to rest, the soldiers who came up first took away Jun Ling's saber and Lu Qing's bayonet. However, the two of them didn't resist. Everything was as Ding Ming expected. The destination was actually the VIP lounge of the Conqueror. Everyone knew that Chu Xiaoqing's starship had always been luxurious. The lounge was indeed a luxurious suite. Unlike before, there was a large group of robot soldiers guarding the door. As soon as Lu Qing and Jun Ling were pushed into the room, they found Chu Xiaoqing sitting on the sofa in the living room, tasting delicious food, while Star Art was reading a crystal magazine. The two of them actually looked very comfortable. It seemed that the Alliance didn't imprison them and only put them under house arrest. Welcome back. Chu Xiaoqing was not surprised, and her attitude was very friendly. Lu Qing sighed. I'm very sorry, Miss Chu, Chu Xiaoqing said. What are you sorry for? Lu Qing said, I didn't expect the higher-ups of the God War Alliance to treat you like this. Chu Xiaoqing said proudly, But that has nothing to do with you. Aren't you locked up now? Lu Qing frowned. You don't seem to be afraid of me. Chu Xiaoqing smiled. Why should I be afraid of you? You're one of us. This was really puzzling. Lu Qing could not help but ask, Are you so sure? Chu Xiaoqing smiled and said, It's just a woman's intuition. Sometimes it's quite useful. Lu Qing was curious. Oh, Chu Xiaoqing said, My intuition tells me that your relationship with Ding Ming is different. I can still tell the difference between men and women. Lu Qing blushed. Sorry, I made a fool of myself. Chu Xiaoqing smiled. It's okay. You and Junling are both back. Dingmeng won't be far away. At the same time, in the starship's prison cabin, Xian Jia was curled up in a corner of the darkness. This was the real prison area. The straight passage was almost blocked by dozens of laser beams. Many of the beams were moving back and forth in the corridor. On both sides were closed metal halls, just like the training room. The only door was the laser closed net. It was completely impossible for anyone to escape from here. After an unknown period of time, the light in the metal hall lit up. A figure appeared at the door like a ghost. Xian Jia struggled to open his eyes. There had been no light in this place for a while. He was a little uncomfortable with the sudden light. When his retina completely returned to normal, he finally showed a long-lost smile. I knew you wouldn't die. Dingmeng looked at Xian Jia silently. Have you been waiting for me for 3 years? Xian Jia did not stand up. He was still curled up. In my prediction, it would take at least 5 years for you to return. I didn't expect you to come back in only 3 years. Dingmeng walked forward, picked up Xian Jia, and carried him on his back. At this time, Little Rascal angrily said, The Alliance is a bunch of scum. They really are scum. Xiao AI sighed. Good thing we came in time. He can still be saved. Only then did Droplet notice that Xian Jia's hands were cut off at the wrists. His legs were also cut off at the ankles. For a normal human, he would not be able to walk. For a hacker and statistician, he would never be able to control a control panel in this lifetime. It was obvious that the person who did this was not only cruel, but also vicious. Looking at Dingmeng's expressionless face, the three of them knew that Dingmeng was definitely holding back a murderous aura right now. They are still polite to Miss Chu, but they are very rude to you, Dingmeng said coldly. Xian Jia lay on Dingmeng's back, his expression still carefree. Of course, they can't understand the starship's technology at all. Too much of the core information is in my brain. They can't just cut off my brain, can they? Dingmeng said, Who did it? Xian Jia hesitated for a moment, then said, I think it was your president. Good, very good. Dingmeng's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Little Rascal, Xiao AI, Droplet, Xian Jia can't move yet. Remove the defensive measures in this area. Understood. Roger. They could not control Little Rascal's starship system, but removing these laser beams was a piece of cake. Xian Jia suddenly sighed. Dingmeng, you should be grateful to your two friends. If it weren't for them desperately trying to stop me, I would have been finished. Dingmeng said. Xian Jia sighed, even louder. Captain Kataga, Vice President Dong E. Dong E and Dong you are brothers, but they are two different people. It's a pity. Dingmeng knew that Kataga and Dong E were most likely dead without him saying it. Xian Jia said, It was by Jin Lai and the others who did it this time. I know. Dingmeng's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Don't say anything. I'll take you to Miss Chu and let you recover in the med bay. Now that Little Rascal and Little AI had extremely high authority, it was a piece of cake for them to take control of the regional system, paralyze the surveillance system, and disable the robot soldiers. Therefore, Dingmeng carried Xian Jia on her back and easily entered Chu Xiaoqing's room. Although they knew that the Alliance would threaten and bribe Xian Jia, Chu Xiaoqing and Star Art were still filled with righteous indignation when they saw Xian Jia's miserable state. The group did not say anything and hurriedly carried Xian Jia into the med bay. 10 minutes later, Xian Jia's broken arms and legs were completely healed. It's time for us to leave this place, Dingmeng said in a low voice. Chu Xiaoqing frowned and said, We can't leave for now. Dingmeng asked why. Xian Jia crawled out of the med bay with a rare, solemn expression on his face. There's several conditions. First, we need to regain control of the starship's mainframe system. Dingmeng said, That shouldn't be difficult for you. Xian Jia shook his head and said, No, we can take it back from the second command center. You should know this. Dingmeng nodded. Right now, the main command center was filled with experts. He did not care, but Chu Xiaoqing and the others were too weak to resist. This was especially true for Xian Jia. He could not be disturbed when he was reoperating the system. Xinjia continued. Secondly, if we want to leave Planet Extreme Flame for real and regain control, we must go to the command center. Lu Qing could not help but ask, why is that? Xinjia said, the various system functions of the Conqueror can only be completed in the first command center. Without these auxiliary functions, we won't be able to go around the main forces of the God Wars fleet on Planet Extreme Flame satellite. Our starship is indeed more advanced, but we won't be able to withstand their numbers. Ding Ming's face darkened. He understood what Xinjia meant. This time, they would have to face the higher-ups of the Alliance. It was almost impossible to activate the Conqueror without alerting them. Chapter 538. The command center was still brightly lit. Other than Shi-1, who was patrolling the control panel from time to time, the leaders of the other sects were all sitting on the sofas in the lounge. Everyone was still in a relatively relaxed mood because Lu Qing was back, Ding Ming was dead, the Conqueror was in their hands, and the factory was operating well. Everything was going according to plan. Li Qingfeng looked at Dong Yu, who was sitting calmly on the sofa opposite him. President Dong, we've been controlling the Conqueror for a few months now. Your experts have also been studying it for the past few months, but you don't seem to have made any progress in the curved screen technology. Li Qingfeng looked at Dong Yu, who was sitting calmly on the sofa opposite him. Dong Yu smiled apologetically. President Li, decryption requires time. You should understand this principle. We'll definitely be able to crack Xinjia's secret command matrix in half a year at most. Fang Ming jumped out decisively. President Dong, the secret command matrix is just a key. If you can't even decrypt the key, I don't think the curved screen technology will be any easier than the matrix. The problem right now was that the curved screen technology on Conqueror was the most important stable technology in space transmission. That was what the Alliance wanted. However, Xinjia had set up an extremely complicated password matrix. Dozens of authoritative specialists of the Long Voyage Alliance had been working hard for 3 months just to decipher the password, and they were still in trouble. Even if they managed to decrypt the password, the real curved screen technology would be even more difficult. If you took half a year to decrypt the password, wouldn't you take years or even decades to decrypt the real technology? There was no way they would let you spend such a long time playing around. Dong Yu smiled confidently. Presidents, don't worry. The starship and the people are in our hands. The technology is only a matter of time. Bai Jinlai also smiled playfully. President Dong, you've been working on it for several months. That Xinjia won't tell you the principle no matter what. It's better to rely on yourself. Our Blue Light Group and Qianhuanyu also have their own technical teams. If they can't do it, why don't you let them try? Dong was furious. So you guys have reached an agreement in private to kick me out? Take the technology for free? Don't even think about it. He was about to retort when the lights around him suddenly went out without warning. The command center was plunged into darkness. Dong Yu abruptly stood up and asked sternly, "What's going on?" "The starship's mainframe system has automatically rebooted," exclaimed a staff member from the work area. Everyone was shocked. The Conqueror's mainframe was set to run for 50 years. How could it be rebooted for no reason? With a ding sound, the main control console let out a soft sound, and all the surrounding light sources were restored. However, the main control console automatically popped up a new hologram. There was only a simple progress bar on the hologram, and it showed that the progress was 1%. Shiwen's beautiful face turned pale with fright. The system is being invaded. The danger level is S, which is a danger level that this starship has never had before. It is also the highest level. As she spoke, she pressed buttons on the main control panel, and many small screens instantly appeared in the air. Shiwen was also a very powerful statistician. Her pair of jade-like hands dazzlingly manipulated the light screen. All kinds of models, graphics, data, and words were refreshed like a waterfall. Many big shots were still relatively calm. It wasn't like they hadn't experienced similar situations before. Dong Yu pondered and then decisively ordered, "Scouts, transfer the surveillance footage to me. The target is the detention cabin." Obviously, he had already thought about it. Aside from Xingia, there was no one else who had the ability to play tricks on this starship. The hologram quickly rose, and then Dong Yu's face sank. The hologram was blank, and the surveillance equipment had obviously been destroyed. Dong Yu quickly changed his words. Change the target. Check the number 2 command post. The hologram changed again, but the content was still the same. Blank. This time, all the big shots' faces sank. Xingia had been rescued, and he must be fighting for control of the backup command center. Dong Yu immediately pressed the wrist device and connected to the communication channel. Number 0013A. Report your location and your situation. The instant message screen quickly popped up, but the person on the screen was not number 0013A, but Ding Meng's face covered in dust and dirt. Ding Meng lazily replied, "Stop shouting. Your people are all dead." Dong Yu was shocked. "You are still alive?" Ding Meng sneered. "Did you all think I was dead? And then you attacked my friends?" Dong Yu calmed down and said seriously, "Ding Meng, you are a member of the Long Voyage Alliance. Quickly report back to the command center." Ding Meng looked at him disdainfully. "Remember what I said." Dong Yu was at a loss. "What did you say?" "I'm your father." After that, the hologram shrank into a line and turned into a dot that drilled back into the wrist device. Ding Meng had obviously forcibly turned off the communication. Everyone looked at each other, and there was no doubt in their eyes that Ding Meng already knew the truth. At this time, the progress bar on the main control panel had reached 5%. Big beads of sweat were dripping down from Shi Wen's temples. In the God War Alliance, no one had ever seen Shi Wen so focused and nervous. It was obvious how effective and sharp Xinjia's counterattack was. Dong Yu quickly stepped forward and helped Shi Wen urgently block Xinjia's invasion. Everyone could see clearly that even with Dong Yu's help, the progress bar was sometimes pushed forward and sometimes regressed. Anyway, it was repeatedly between 3% and 7%. The situation was like two armies fighting back and forth, and it was difficult to determine the winner in a short time. Even people who didn't understand system technology could now see that Shi Wen and Dong Yu were the most authoritative experts in the God War Alliance. Even when they worked together, it was still so difficult for them. It was enough to show the intensity of the battle between hackers. When the progress bar rose to 10%, Jin Lai couldn't sit still anymore. He turned his head and said, "White Tiger." White Tiger immediately stepped forward. "Boss," Jin Lai said, "take people to the backup center to see who is making trouble." White Tiger said, "What do you need me to do?" Jin Lai made a gesture with his hand. White Tiger nodded. "Understand." As soon as White Tiger left, Su Lingyue and Liang Yi, who were behind Lin Aoshue, quietly retreated. Of course, this move couldn't be hidden from the big bosses. Fang Ming couldn't help but say, "President Lin, in fact, White Tiger alone is enough." Lin Aoshue forced a smile. Qing Qing and the others have always been sisters. Naturally, I don't want her to go astray. I also hope that she can come back as soon as possible. What she meant was that since Ding Meng had appeared inside the starship, Chu Shaoqing, Lu Qing, and the others must have been released. There was no need to check the monitor in the lounge anymore. There was definitely no one there. The backup command center was located at the end of the starship. This location was very hidden. It was on the 5th floor of the storage area. The first floor was equivalent to the ground level. It was a very wide metal hall. Facing this hall was the entertainment area and the dining hall. In front of the dining hall was a straight path. In other words, the backup command center was a dead end. There was no way out if you went there, or you had to go back the way you came. Therefore, Ding Meng guarded the entrance of the passage while Lu Qing and Jun Ling guarded the metal hall behind. What they needed to do now was to wait for the people from the Alliance to arrive. They had to buy enough time for Xinjia. After the system was rebooted, the two sides fell into a struggle for control. At this time, the starship was basically paralyzed. All the internal attack and defense functions were in a state of stagnation. However, the first people to arrive were not the White Tiger, but Su Lingyue and Liang Yi. Ding Meng noticed them when they were still 5,000 meters away. However, Ding Meng leaned against the metal door and did not move. He did not want to kill Su Lingwei and Liang Yi. After all, they were Lu Qing's sisters. Of course, he would not let these two women pass. In the middle of the passage, Su Lingwei shouted from afar, "Ding Ming, get out of here now." Ding Ming looked at her, but did not answer. Liang Yi could not help but ask, "Ding Ming, is Qingqing in the backup command center?" "Stop right there." Ding Ming's face darkened. "If you go any further, don't blame me for being rude to Lu Qing's friends." Su Lingwei was anxious. "Ding Ming, leave now. The white tiger will be here soon." In her mind, Ding Ming was indeed strong, but he was not strong enough to fight a warlord. Ding Ming suddenly sighed. "There's no need." Su Lingwei was stunned. "Why?" Ding Ming did not answer. He just stared behind her. Su Lingwei and Liang Yi turned around at the same time. They saw the white tiger slowly walking out from the depths of the passage. This guy was tall and strong. He looked a bit like the leopard from the Black Gold base. One look and one could tell that he was a tough guy. However, the white tiger came here alone. He understood that bringing a group of soldiers to a battle above the warlord level was no different from sending his subordinates to their deaths. Since Ding Ming could live underground for 3 years on the planet of fire, he was no weakling. The white tiger said in a deep voice, "Ding Ming, since you're a member of the Long Voyage Alliance, you should report to the command center now. Go now. I won't stop you." Ding Ming suddenly laughed. "Let me ask you, did the Blu-ray group do something to Captain Katika and Chairman Dong Yi?" The white tiger laughed as well. His smile was cruel. "I helped them out of respect. But those two guys were tough. They struggled for a while before they fell." Ding Ming rubbed his hands. "Good, very good." The white tiger frowned. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish the word think, Ding Ming was already in front of him. To be exact, his hand was less than half a meter away from the white tiger's temple. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. The white tiger's towering body was knocked to the ground. He even rolled for 6 or 7 meters. The steel plates on the ground made a rumbling sound. Su Lingwei and Liang Yi's jaws dropped. They couldn't see Ding Ming's movements clearly. Ding Ming looked down at the white tiger and raised a finger. "Get up." The white tiger wasn't surprised. He didn't expect this kid to attack so quickly. He slowly got up and circulated his origin energy. A white layer of origin energy immediately appeared on his body. Then, he pounced on Ding Ming like a ferocious tiger. Chapter 539. When White Tiger pounced on them, Su Lingwei and Su Lingling could clearly feel the powerful energy coming from him. First of all, the plating was solid and heavy. Clearly, it belonged to the body hardening series. Second, his steps were complicated, forming a weird S shape. Third, his hands seemed to be constantly changing. There was an invisible force in front of his palms, which had dented a large part of the steel plates around him. Clearly, he had used many martial arts skills. The power made it difficult for Su Lingwei and Su Lingling to breathe. However, in the next second, there was another muffled bang. Ding Ming didn't move from his original position. His body leaned forward slightly, and the knife in his right hand was raised diagonally backward. His posture was quite elegant. Su Lingwei and Su Lingwei could not believe their eyes. Once again, White Tiger was lying on the ground. His entire body had sunk into the steel plate. He seemed to have lost consciousness. This god-level fighter of the Blue Light Group, a mighty warrior who had always been awe-inspiring, was as fragile as a piece of paper in front of Ding Ming. With 2 strikes from Ding Ming, White Tiger fell to the ground twice. It was like a wooden board hitting a steel plate. White Tiger didn't move at all. "Trash!" Ding Ming stared at him. "Get up." White Tiger's entire body flew backwards. After its body spun in the air, its back foot smashed fiercely towards Ding Ming's head. There was also a pure white eye of light on its battle boots. This was definitely an even higher level martial technique. However, it didn't work. Ding Ming casually reached out and grabbed White Tiger's ankle. Then, Ding Ming kicked White Tiger's crotch. White Tiger's face turned pale. He curled into a ball and flew for dozens of meters before hitting the crystal plate on the left side of the corridor. With a ding sound, the crystal board shattered into pieces, and the white tiger fell down along with some of the pieces. He sat on the ground and looking at his blurry eyes. This time, he should have been knocked out. Su Lingwei and Su Lingling were numb. They pressed their bodies against the wall, afraid that they would be hurt. Ding Ming turned around and glared at the two of them. Turn on your wristbands and connect them to the command center. Su Lingwei and Liang, he didn't dare to waste any time. They quickly created a real-time communication screen and aimed it at the center of the tunnel. At this moment, the bosses in the command center could see the situation clearly. Ding Ming had already walked in front of White Tiger. He reached out and grabbed White Tiger's ankle. Then, he swung White Tiger up and smashed him onto the steel plate on the ground. Of course, this was the first time. The second time, he used the same method. He swung White Tiger up and smashed him down again. The scene was a bit like smashing a piece of dead meat. You think you're doing them a favor by attacking them? Very well. Now, I'm doing you a favor. Why don't you say thank you? Ding Ming swung his arm again. White Tiger's face was bruised and swollen. The entire corridor was trembling slightly. Seeing this scene, Bai Jinlai's lungs were about to explode. Ding Ming had thrown down the White Tiger's men, but the one who had lost face was Bai Jinlai. However, the other people's expressions were grim. Everyone realized that this inconspicuous Ding Ming was actually so powerful that the White Tiger couldn't even fight back. At the moment, by the control panel, Dong Yu was also sweating. He was also anxious. Chairman, the opponent's progress has reached 20%. Everyone was shocked and turned their heads to look. The many small screens on the main control console were originally green, but now many of them were faintly red. Xi and Jia was gradually gaining the upper hand. However, Ding Ming's abuse wouldn't be forgotten so easily. Ding Ming said to Su Lingyue's wrist device, send someone decent. To be honest, I feel ashamed for the League of Gods. Everyone could see that Ding Ming wasn't abusing White Tiger. He was just stalling for time. Li Qingfeng's face turned pale. Zhang Ming, behind him, a middle-aged man wearing an interstellar armor answered, Brother Li. Li Qingfeng said, kill this Ding Ming. Zhang Ming lowered his head at once. Don't worry. I promise. Qing Zhongfeng also said, Giant Peng. A skinny old man with some white hair on his head also stood out. Leader, Qing Zhongfeng said in a low voice, go with Brother Ming and help him complete the mission. Also, bring Lu Qing back. She's at your disposal. Lin Aoshue's face turned cold when she heard the first sentence. The corner of her mouth twitched, but she didn't say anything in the end. Making such a promise to Zhu Peng was undoubtedly asking him to do his best. Zhu Peng and Zhang Ming were both vice presidents. If the two of them couldn't defeat Ding Ming, it could only be said that there were only a handful of people on the Conqueror who could defeat Ding Ming. However, what happened next made everyone's eyes pop out of their sockets. Ding Ming waved his hand, and the catoptric deflection on his belt turned into a short and sharp dagger. Ding Ming pressed down on White Tiger's wrist and cut down mercilessly. White Tiger, who was lying on the ground, let out an earth-shattering howl. He writhed on the ground like a prawn. There was no other reason. Ding Ming had directly cut off his right pinky finger. Blood flew into the air along with the finger. Ding Ming didn't even raise his head. He waved his hand, and a fireball shot out from his palm. With a boom, the fireball directly turned the finger into ashes. Bastard! Bai Jinlai was furious. This White Tiger was also his nephew, yet was being cruelly abused. He couldn't help but roar, kill Ding Ming for me. Ding Ming could hear his roar through the screen. Ding Ming smiled. You're right to be angry. As he spoke, he slashed down again and cut off another finger. Blood splattered all over Ding Ming's face. Ding Ming sneered and licked the blood at the corner of his lips. Tastes pretty good. Qing Zhongfeng couldn't hold it in any longer. He suppressed his anger and said, Ding Ming, don't go too far. Don't you understand this principle? Ding Ming sneered. Did you think of this principle when you killed people and stole their starships? He couldn't be bothered with these Alliance higher-ups. His sword flashed again. White Tiger was in so much pain that he couldn't even make a sound. His body was twitching violently. It wasn't that he was weak. It was just that Ding Ming had injected a large amount of origin energy into his body, suppressing the origin energy in his body. Of course, White Tiger didn't know what this strange origin energy was because Ding Ming himself had been hit by this move before, the origin body. Back then, Lan Bing had used this move to suppress him. However, in the past few years of training underground, Ding Ming had also refined his own origin body. If he met someone weaker than him, he would be tortured. Crack, crack, crack. Su Lingwei couldn't help but close her eyes. She had killed before, but she had never seen such a cruel method. All 10 of the White Tiger's fingers were cut off. Blood was gushing out. The White Tiger's vital signs were fading. However, Su Lingwei and Liang didn't dare to move. If Ding Ming wanted to kill them, he could do so with a single breath. After 3 years, they didn't know what Ding Ming had gone through in the underground world of Planet Extreme Flame. How did he become so powerful? Unfortunately, Captain Kartika and President Dong are tough guys, but you aren't. Ding Ming squatted on the ground and looked at White Tiger with a smile. Since you're not struggling, there's no need for me to keep you alive. White Tiger didn't have the strength to make sound. He could only glare at Ding Ming with resentful eyes. Stop! A dignified voice came from the other end of the tunnel. Zhang Ming and the giant rock had arrived as quickly as possible. Zhang Ming was holding a shiny machete in his hand. The machete was huge, almost as big as he was. There was an inexplicable coldness on the blade. It had to be a sharp weapon. The giant rock didn't have a weapon, but he was glaring at Ding Ming. It was as if he was about to spit fire. He already knew that the high and mighty goddess had never looked a man in the eye, but now she had taken a liking to this ordinary-looking Ding Ming. Thinking of the goddess's fairy-like body being pressed down by Ding Ming, the giant rock wanted to pound Ding Ming into meat paste. Ding Ming, how dare you? Zhang Ming scolded coldly. How dare you kill your own people? Ding Ming said, don't talk nonsense. Come over here and die. The giant rock gritted his teeth and said, little thing, if you dare to touch Lu Qing, I'll grind you into ashes today. Well, this was another one who was deeply in love with Lu Qing. He was already so old, but he still had a heart full of love. Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh. Touch her? How could I just touch her? I've slept with her many times. If you're not convinced, then come over here and die. Don't talk nonsense over there. This was his old trick. He mocked him verbally and made him break down mentally. Die for me. The giant rock's old face turned livid. He swayed his body and quickly rushed over. The person had yet to arrive, but the surrounding air had suddenly turned cold. Even Ding Ming felt a needle-like chill. This person did not have the same strength as the White Tiger. He did not dare to be negligent. He flew up and kicked the White Tiger toward the giant rock. Then, he glided backwards lightly. Seeing that it was President Bai's nephew, the giant rock didn't dare act rashly. He flipped his palms up and pushed the seriously injured White Tiger behind him. Then he pushed his palms forward, and a violent ice dust storm swept toward Ding Ming. This storm was indeed astonishingly powerful. It could be said that it was completely like a tide. The steel plates on the walls crackled and cracked, and all the light went out. Su Lingwei and Liang also retreated far away. The light screen was a white blur, and they couldn't see the specific situation at all. But while the giant rock's palm wind was fierce, it was actually already at a disadvantage. It would have been fine if he hadn't pushed White Tiger away. But now, Ding Ming was pushed back at least 40 to 50 meters and was no longer in the center of the storm. Even so, Ding Ming had activated the first 4 origins. The giant rock's ice energy foundation wasn't weak. Although the storm didn't affect him, the temperature dropped and his movement slowed considerably. Just as Ding Ming was about to steady himself, there was suddenly the sharp sound of clothes ripping through the air above his head. 2 identical Zhang Ming appeared in the air, and 2 machetes chopped down with enough force to split Mount Hua. Chapter 540. Ding Ming didn't take Zhang Ming's broadsword head-on. He tiptoed forward and glided backward again. Ding! The broadsword landed on the steel plates on the floor. Then came a series of loud noises. The steel plates in the middle of the corridor were all cracked. A thick bolt of lightning struck at Ding Ming as if it had eyes. This time, Ding Ming had nowhere to run. Clang! The golden diamond shield covered Ding Ming's body. However, the shield was still no match for the power of the lightning bolt. The bolt of lightning as thick as an arm twisted and struck several times. The first strike cracked the shield. The second strike shattered half of the shield. The third strike destroyed the shield completely. Boom! With a loud explosion, countless steel plates flew up. Ding Ming was completely surrounded by a ball of electric light. Zhang Ming and the giant rock's joint attack was not only powerful, but also well-coordinated. Basically, Ding Ming had no chance to fight back. Su Lingyue covered her mouth as she watched the lightning bolt burning Ding Ming. Ding Ming. In her mind, she and Liang, he didn't want anything to happen to Ding Ming. However, the electromagnetic energy in front of them was so strong that they had never seen anything like it. The energy at the epicenter was so strong that even the wristwatches on their wrists were disconnected because of the interference. A moment later, the lightning gradually disappeared. Ding Ming seemed to have been turned into a charred corpse. Smoke was rising from his body. However, Zhang Ming and the giant rock's faces were still gloomy. Ding Ming seemed to have been severely injured, but in fact, he was not weakened at all. Uffed! Ding Ming turned around and spat on the ground. His entire body had been burned and cracked by the electromagnetic energy. He was only wearing a pair of black underwear, which made him look a bit dirty. You can do it. Ding Ming spat again. You knocked my clothes off. Go. Zhang Ming signaled the giant rock. The giant rock also knew that this kid was a strong opponent. He had to kill him in one go, so he rushed forward again. At this moment, it was basically impossible to see the real bodies of the three of them. Within the blizzard, countless afterimages and blade lights were flying around. However, if one were to take a closer look, they would be able to see that the giant rock's palms were constantly creating ice-type astral winds. Zhang Ming, on the other hand, was flashing back and forth as he chased after Ding Ming. Ding Ming, on the other hand, was constantly dodging and not fighting back. In fact, after reaching the Battle Monarch level, the different types of origin energy were not that obvious. Although the giant rock was an ice elemental, he was very fast, and his palms and fists were very strong. Although the giant rock was an ice elemental energy, he was very fast and was very skilled in his palms and fists. Although the giant rock was an ice elemental energy, and his palms and fists were very strong. Had the giant was in the sky, was in the air to be to of was down on zzzz, had two zzzz, was could assess. Yes. The giant rock was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Bastard, take this if you have the guts. Zhang Ming was also very angry. The roaming dragon saber technique that he was so proud of was something that almost no one in the God War star field could withstand more than 10 strikes from him. However, he had slashed at Ding Ming more than 30 times, and he hadn't even managed to cut off a single hair on his body. At this moment, the screen disappeared, and Li Qingfeng's voice sounded from the communicator. Is it done? The opponent's progress bar has already reached 30%. Zhang Ming suddenly realized that it wasn't that this kid didn't want to take the attack, but that he was deliberately stalling for time. If this continued, that Xian guy would be able to take back the starship. Once the starship returned to Xian Jie's hands, who knew what would happen? The giant rock's 2 index fingers and 2 thumbs formed a heart shape, and with a loud shout, he pushed his palms forward. Whoosh! A pure white torrent flooded the entire tunnel. This was the technique that he was famous for, the Tide of 1,000 Ice. It was especially suited to be used in such a small space. There was no way to dodge such a terrifying attack. Ding Ming was directly annihilated by the ice torrent. Within the torrent, Zhang Ming's 3 doppelgangers attacked together, and 3 saber lights slashed at Ding Ming. This level of attack practically sealed off all escape routes. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. The saber seemed to have hit something hard again. The giant rock took a closer look and saw that the saber lights from the 3 doppelgangers had indeed hit the center of Ding Ming's forehead. However, The problem was that Ding Meng was completely fine. He was standing there, perfectly fine. Zhang Meng was a little dumbfounded. This saber was made from a combination of super alloy and nanomaterials. It even had nanochromium porcelain that had been refined twice. Even the laser cannons on the starship couldn't destroy it. However, when this saber hit Ding Meng's head, it didn't move at all. It was like an alloy head. What the hell? Zhang Meng was stunned. Watch out! The giant rock reminded him decisively. Ding Meng swung his hand backward. The hand saber had already formed, and it swung back like a real saber. Due to the ice force field of the tide of 1,000 ice, the speed of Ding Meng's hand saber was greatly reduced. Zhang Meng's reaction was also quite fast. When he saw his opponent raise his hand, he immediately let go of the saber and stepped back dozens of meters in the blink of an eye. Unexpectedly, the hand saber didn't hit him, but the saber he had left behind. With a muffled sound, the hand saber hit the handle of the saber. A light green flame immediately ignited on the saber's blade. It was obvious that the source energy had been poured into it. The saber suddenly turned into a flaming saber. Ding Meng switched from hand saber to elbow, then used his elbow to hit the rotating handle of the saber. The flaming saber miraculously changed direction, going against the current of the ice force. It whizzed towards Zhang Meng like a bolt of lightning. It was so fast and powerful that it was obvious that it couldn't be blocked. Zhang Meng hadn't expected this turn of events, but his instincts were still there. He kicked off the wall to the side of the tunnel and used the momentum of this kick to spin in a half circle in the air. The flaming saber almost brushed past his head as it flew past. The instant the saber passed through his head, Zhang Meng's hair was immediately scalded off. He also felt that his head, shoulders, and face were all burned to varying degrees. The temperature of the saber was simply too high. It was at least tens of thousands of degrees. Even if it didn't hit him directly, the heat from such a close distance was no laughing matter. The heat was enough to burn him. At the same time that Zhang Meng landed on the ground, something that neither he nor the giant rock had ever dreamed of happened. The flaming saber seemed to have grown a pair of eyes as it spun in a half circle in the air in coordination with Zhang Meng's tumbling posture. Then it turned around and viciously chopped down with the mountain's splitting strength that it was most proficient in. Cha! Zhang Meng's arm and shoulder were directly separated. As soon as the blood spurted out, it was immediately frozen into a blood clot by the icy tide, like a large ruby. The saber had no problem cutting Ding Meng, but cutting himself was extremely easy. Not to mention that the saber was attached with such a powerful heat. Zhang Meng's body was set on fire, and his body was limp as he leaned against the wall. Brother Meng. The giant rock was both shocked and angry. Even Zhang Meng had been cut down, so it was almost impossible for him to kill Ding Meng alone. Ah! The giant roared and instantly put his palms together in the shape of a heart. The pure white cold current immediately gathered together and condensed into a large ice ball, completely freezing Ding Meng in it. His train of thought was also correct. At this time, it was unrealistic to take care of Zhang Meng. He directly froze Ding Meng so that he couldn't attack again. Seeing that the ice ball had taken shape, Zhang Meng could be considered to be quite resilient. He picked up the machete with one hand, rose up again, and rushed forward to chop Ding Meng's heart. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Ding Meng, who was inside the ice ball, pushed his palms to the sides. The force of the Overlord's mountain-crushing force shook the ice ball into ice shards. Good boy, you really have guts. The sixth origin point in Ding Meng's body had been activated. His eyes shone with a fierce light. You actually dare to come and throw your life away. The catoptric deflection shot out again, turning into a large sword in the air. Clang! There was a crisp sound as the large sword directly knocked the machete away. Ding Meng withdrew his sword, turned his hand, and stabbed forward. This was the purest form of the piercing sword. Zhang Meng's body stopped in the air. His eyes widened, but he couldn't open his mouth. This was because the sharp sword had drilled into his mouth, stuck to his tongue, and pierced through the back of his neck. It was as if he had delivered himself to the tip of the sword, and the situation was more like Ding Ming holding a skewer of meat with his sword. In the distance, Zhu Peng was also stunned. Ding Ming had actually pierced Zhang Meng's throat with a single sword strike. With a wound of this degree, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. Woo-woo. A string of strange sounds came from Zhang Meng's throat. It was obvious that he wanted to speak, but unfortunately, his vocal cords couldn't produce any sound. Do you want to beg for mercy? Ding Ming sneered. He slightly shook his wrist. You can beg for mercy when you're in hell. Bang! Zhang Meng's head exploded. Countless droplets of blood and brain matter turned into a mist that filled the air. You! How dare you? Zhu Peng was stunned. Of course, only he knew that behind this shock, there was more fear. Even he couldn't kill the vice president of Blood War Hall with a single sword strike. It's your turn. Ding Ming didn't hold back. He raised his hand, and the catoptric deflection whistled through the air towards Zhu Peng. As the originally straight greatsword flew into the air, it immediately split into two, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 8. In the blink of an eye, it had formed 16 short swords that glittered with cold light. It was like a net of light that covered Zhu Peng. Just like before, Zhu Peng's front, back, up, down, left, and right were all sealed. Just like before, it was impossible to dodge. Zhu Peng's pupils constricted. He could already tell that Ding Ming's ever-changing sword was indestructible. If he tried to block it head-on, he would definitely be in trouble. Whoosh! A layer of wave-like energy immediately appeared around Zhu Peng. It was like mist, but it wasn't mist. It was like smoke, but it wasn't smoke. However, when the 16 flying swords flew over, this layer of energy suddenly formed with a kacha sound. It turned out to be a white, solid ice shield. The shield precisely froze the flying swords in the air. In fact, it wasn't the ice energy that froze the flying swords. Rather, the moment the ice formed, it used the pressure of the ice layer to clamp down on the flying swords. Zhu Peng not only had good eyesight, but also had rich combat experience. But so what? Ding Ming raised his head slightly, and all the flying swords were summoned back into the air. After a kacha sound, the short swords turned back into great swords again. Swish, swish, swish. Just when Zhu Peng thought that Ding Ming was summoning his weapons back, Ding Ming didn't catch the swords at all. Instead, he formed a hand knife with his palms and slashed forward fiercely. With a dang sound, the great sword changed direction again and shot towards Zhu Peng like a laser beam. Zhu Peng's pupils constricted completely this time. The body of the great sword actually ignited with an icy blue flame. Before the sword reached, the ice shield had already been vaporized by the terrifying heat wave. Chapter 541. Thud. It sounded like a woodpecker gnawing on wood. The wood was now the steel plate on the wall of the tunnel. The sword pierced through Zhu Peng's palm and then into his heart. He flew through the air with his sword and was nailed to a steel plate. Zhu Peng was immediately ignited by the icy blue flames and turned into a ball of blue light. A puddle of water silently floated up from under Ding Ming's feet. It moved along the ground at an astonishing speed toward the burning blue light and instantly enveloped it. A moment later, the blue light disappeared. It meant that there was nothing left. Not only was Zhu Peng gone, but even his scattered origin energy had been absorbed by the water droplet. He could not turn into slag or ashes even if he wanted to. The water droplet absorbed the energy of an intermediate warlord and was satisfied for a moment. I'll rest for a while. Ding Ming, continue. Ding Ming recalled his catoptric deflection and turned around. He stretched out 3 fingers and flicked them gently. 2 orange stars flew toward the 2 ice sculptures behind him. The ice slowly melted and vaporized. Su Lingyue and Liang Yi, who were frozen, fell to the ground with a plop. Although Zhu Peng's 1,000 Ice Tide could not do anything to Ding Ming, it was not something they could resist. Even if they hid far away, the aftermath still froze them. At this moment, Lu Qing finally appeared at the door. She immediately rushed over and helped the 2 of them up. Yeah, sistery, are you okay? Liang Yi was a warlord and recovered faster than Su Lingwei. He soon woke up. What happened? Where are they? The entire tunnel had been blown out of shape, but there was nothing inside. There were no people or corpses. However, Liang Yi still remembered that he had been frozen. Ding Ming said calmly, "Your alliance wants to kill you. They don't see the two of you as humans at all." Su Lingwei also woke up. When she saw Lu Qing, the two of them immediately hugged each other. Ding Ming said, "Lu Qing, take them down. This place is too dangerous. Even I have to retreat. The people who will come later are definitely not people you can handle." These words were very tactful, but Liang Yi understood the meaning behind them. When the Alliance sent more masters, they would not even be qualified to watch the battle. Even if they did, they would be killed. Ding Ming could save them once, but he could not save them a second time. Su Lingwei understood that as well. The two bowed to Ding Ming to express their gratitude. At the same time, in the command center, Shiwen's entire body was drenched in sweat. Dong Yu's eyes were bloodshot. The progress bar on a main console had already broken through 50%. Xi and Jie's attacks were still increasing, and they were getting faster and faster. Qing Zhongfeng and Li Qingfeng's expressions were extremely ugly. Now, not only were they gradually losing control of the starship, but the communication between Zhu Peng and Zhang Ming was also cut off. Looking at the two big shots' expressions, Bai Jinlai was in disbelief. He probed, "Is the communicator malfunctioning?" Li Qingfeng answered coldly, "It's possible for one person to malfunction, but how can two people malfunction at the same time?" Hiss! Bai Jinlai couldn't help but gasp. This Ding Ming had defeated both Zhu Peng and Zhang Ming. This was Qing Zhongfeng. Soon calmed down. "Guys, we still underestimated him. We don't have much time left. For safety's sake, we must eliminate those people once and for all." Li Qingfeng clenched his teeth. "I'll go." Bai Jinlai nodded. "Count me in." Qing Zhongfeng said, "I'll go with you. Nothing will go wrong." Lin Aoshue shook her head. "I won't go. I can't do that to Qingqing. Everyone can understand that." Qing Zhongfeng looked at Fang Ming. "What about Chairman Fang?" Fang Ming smiled awkwardly. "The three chairmen of the Alliance are working together. I can't think of anyone who could defeat you." Qing Zhongfeng gave him a meaningful look. "Okay, it's good to leave the command center with the three of you. Nothing will go wrong." With that, the three of them stood up and slowly walked towards the main door. On the top floor of the backup command center, Ding Ming sat cross-legged in the metal hall. He closed his eyes and rested, because he knew that the people coming this time would not be defeated with just a few punches and kicks. He had to be prepared. When Qing Zhongfeng, Bai Jinlai, and Li Qingfeng appeared at the main door, Ding Ming slowly opened his eyes. "Kid, you're quite patient." Bai Jinlai was dressed in a suit and looked like a gentleman. However, Ding Ming did not dare to underestimate him. This chairman of the Blue Light Group had the strength of an advanced combat monarch. This guy, if he wants to die, he can't blame anyone else. Li Qingfeng said. He was a level 4 martial sage, which meant that he was a beginner combat sage. His battle index was more than 1 billion. Qing Zhongfeng did not say anything. He carefully observed Ding Ming. For what he could sense, Ding Ming's aura was not strong. At most, he was a level 10 spiritual general, which meant that he was a beginner combat monarch. It was because he was not strong that he was even more cautious. They already knew about Ding Ming's information. Ding Ming was from a thermodynamics department. This meant that Ding Ming's explosive power was very high. Even White Tiger, Zhang Ming, and Zhu Peng were defeated by him. The three of them could not be much stronger than him. Besides Li Qingfeng, who was a combat sage, Qing Zhongfeng and Bai Jinlai were both advanced combat monarchs. It was natural for them to be careful. Seeing the three of them staring at him, Ding Ming could not help but laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Bai Jinlai asked coldly. Ding Ming laughed. "I'm laughing at your cowardice, sending useless people to their deaths." Li Qingfeng said in a low voice. "Meng Zi is not a useless person." Ding Ming laughed even harder. "You think I'm talking about the two from before?" Qing Zhongfeng was stunned. "Aren't you?" Ding Ming laughed. "You're mistaken. The three of you are the same as the two of them. You're all here to die." Kid, you're asking for it. Bai Jinlai finally could not take it anymore. His body flashed, and he appeared in front of Ding Ming. He raised his hand and slashed at Ding Ming. This palm was faintly coated with a cyan layer. It was definitely a refined origin energy flame. This time, Ding Ming didn't even move, not to mention not even lifting his butt. He casually waved his hand. Pung! The air exploded again. Bai Jinlai slid back to his original position. Then, his suit was torn to shreds. Just like Ding Ming, he was naked from head to toe. Qing Zhongfeng and Li Qingfeng's eyes were filled with shock. Even though Ding Ming had blocked with his palm, the aura that had erupted in that instant was at least that of a battle sage. Stop looking! Bai Jinlai roared. Old Qing, old Li, let's attack together. Qing Zhongfeng and Li Qingfeng no longer had any doubts. They stepped forward at the same time, one from the left and one from the right. At the same time, Ding Ming's expression suddenly became indescribably terrifying. The 8th origin point in his body had been activated, and a terrifying aura exuded from his body. Fortunately, Lu Qing and the other two were no longer present. If they were, they would have sensed that the aura that Ding Ming had suddenly erupted with was even more terrifying and frightening than the Thousand Eyes Tide that Zhu Peng had used earlier. It was simply like a monstrous wave that smashed towards Li Qingfeng and the other two. Qing Zhongfeng and Li Qingfeng were only halfway there when they felt an irresistible aura directly hit them in the face. Even breathing was difficult. It was the feeling of suffocation. Amidst the torrential aura, the two of them could clearly see that Ding Ming's hand had already lit up. However, this time, it was not the carp leaping through the dragon's gate. Instead, it was the carp leaping through the dragon's gate. Swish, swish, swish. 3 deep, blue crescent-shaped blade lights flew through the air like meteors catching up at the moon. Those were not real blade lights. Instead, they were materialized flames refined from extremely pure source energy. They looked just like real blade lights. Holy shit! Li Qingfeng couldn't help but curse. He had never seen anyone cultivate heat source power to such an extent before. This was simply unimaginable and shocking. Ding! Li Qingfeng suddenly stopped midway and pushed his palm forward. An arc-shaped orange shield appeared in his palm. However, the blade lights broke the shield as soon as they reached him, and the powerful aftershock still hit his palm. This aftershock even rolled up the steel plate on the ground dozens of meters high, dragging Li Qingfeng's entire body into it. Qing Zhongfeng was somewhat knowledgeable. He knew how terrifying this blade light was, so he did not dare to take it head-on. He rolled to the side and rolled away. However, he did not know how powerful Ding Ming's telekinesis was. The blade light seemed to have grown eyes. He rolled on the ground twice, and just as he stood up, the blade light was already at his side. Crack! Qing Zhongfeng's left arm was cut off at the shoulder. Perhaps even he himself could not believe that Ding Ming had cut off his arm in one move. After all these years of living like a prince, he was already used to being surrounded by people. He had never suffered such great pain before. Qing Zhongfeng immediately fell to the ground and rolled around, screaming like a pig being slaughtered. Looking at Bai Jinlai, who was at the very back, he had already been cut in half by the blade light. His body was surrounded by deep blue flames as he fell on the steel plate. At this moment, even the steel plate had melted and turned into a pool of molten steel. The entire metal hull shook and trembled nonstop. After an unknown amount of time, which felt like a century, Qing Zhongfeng finally broke free from the intense pain and stood up shakily. At this moment, all of his dignity as a president was gone. Ding Ming was now standing in front of him, coldly looking at him. This distance was less than a meter. He could reach out and fight back, but he did not do so because he did not even have the courage to do so. The difference in power between the three of them and Ding Ming was not something that could be described as a difference. Ding Ming was like a mountain that they would never be able to climb over. Qing Zhongfeng did not even dream that this young man, who was not even 30 years old, was such a terrifying god-level existence. You can't kill me. Qing Zhongfeng held his broken arm with a terrified expression. I really don't want to kill you. Ding Meng sighed. Unfortunately, you have to die. Plop. Qing Zhongfeng knelt on the ground. Why? Ding Meng looked at him and said calmly, because you should thank me. Dying by my hands is your fortune. Qing Zhongfeng did not understand these words and could not understand them. Ding Meng's face was deep in thought. I can let you go, but your end will be even worse. Death, for you, may be a release. Chapter 542. The hall suddenly fell silent as a strange atmosphere filled the air. The only sound that could be heard was the sound of metal being burned. Qing Zhongfeng stared at Ding Meng as he retreated step by step. Ding Meng, on the other hand, looked at him expressionlessly. He didn't seem to have any intention of continuing the fight. Suddenly, Qing Zhongfeng's entire body spasmed violently. Not long after, his eyes rolled into the back of his head as white foam came out of his mouth. Finally, he collapsed to the ground. He would never know how he died. A bright and sharp sword tip suddenly drilled out from under the steel plate. This sword pierced through his crotch, straight to his heart, and finally drilled out of the top of his head. Just the length of this sword was already shocking enough. The key was that such a spicy and strange sword style was really unexpected. Ding Meng let out a long sigh. I told you, it would be better if you died by my hands. Too bad you didn't listen. Qing Zhongfeng would never be able to hear these words. It wasn't until his huge body crashed to the ground that the metal plate on the ground exploded. A figure rose into the air and slashed down with a super long sword. Ding Meng had already expected this. He glided back and said, not bad. Li Qingfeng held the long sword and said, how did you know? What couldn't he see with his telekinesis? The blade light, just now, seemed to have sucked Li Qingfeng into the metal plate. In reality, Li Qingfeng had taken the opportunity to burrow into the ground. He thought that he could fool Ding Meng, but Ding Meng had already seen through his actions. He knew that something was wrong. Ding Meng said, you killed Qing Zhongfeng. It's not a good thing for you. Li Qingfeng smiled. You're wrong. I didn't kill Qing Zhongfeng. You did. Ding Meng nodded. That's right. I killed Qing Zhongfeng, and then you killed me. When we go back, you can rightfully take over the Holy War Army and the Blue Light Group. Li Qingfeng laughed. Smart. I like to deal with smart people. Ding Meng was still nodding. Yes, I'm smart, but you're not. Li Qingfeng smiled and said, you're still so stubborn even when you're about to die. Tell me how you want to die. Seeing that you're cooperating, I'll give you a quick death. Ding Meng sighed. You're wrong if you think that I only have a spiritual energy index of 1 billion points. Li Qingfeng laughed loudly again. You focused all your strength on the three of us just now. Now that you've passed your peak, I can't think of anything else you can do. His judgment was without a doubt very reasonable. Although the three materialized flames Ding Meng unleashed were ferocious and fierce, the person who was able to do this was at least a battle saint. Such an all-out attack must have consumed too much energy and weakened him. Li Qingfeng came to this conclusion because Ding Meng was just too young. Ding Meng was only 30 years old. Even if he had been absorbing origin energy since he was in his mother's womb, it would be impossible for him to reach that level even if he was a genius. After all, he couldn't possibly be a mid-level battle saint at level 8. Ding Meng seemed to know what Li Qingfeng was thinking. He laughed coldly and said, sorry, I've disappointed you. As soon as he said this, Li Qingfeng's expression changed. He was shocked to discover that Ding Meng's aura was still surging wildly. His origin energy index had instantly broken through 2.5 billion points, and his 9th origin had already been activated. His origin energy index had reached a whole new level. In the end, Ding Meng hadn't spent the past 3 years in the underground world of Planet Extreme Flame for nothing. Li Qingfeng gritted his teeth. Now that he had the sword in his hand, he had to kill him even if he didn't want to. If he didn't kill Ding Meng would kill him anyway. He had no other choice. Bang! A faint blue flame suddenly ignited on the blade of the super long sword. Li Qingfeng gripped the sword with both hands and used all of his strength to stab it towards Ding Meng's heart. In that instant, the metal hall, which covered an area of nearly 10,000 square meters, began to shake violently. All of the steel plates on the floor were lifted up, and large swaths of the air were torn apart. The origin energy flames wrapped around the blade of the sword, making it impossible to tell whether they were flames or swords. In the blink of an eye, a streak of blue light arrived. Ding! The sword seemed to have collided with something. Li Qingfeng lowered his head to look and saw that Ding Ming had actually used his right hand to block such a powerful stab. A white light seemed to have appeared in the center of Ding Ming's palm. It vaguely resembled some sort of complicated diagram, but it also resembled a lifelike tree. This was the combination of the diamond star-fusing art and the blue spirit technique. The star-fusing art absorbed origin energy, while the technique imprisoned the sword. Li Qingfeng felt as if his internal organs were being turned upside down. Countless amounts of origin energy were being sucked away by Ding Ming's sword. He couldn't stab it in, and he couldn't pull it back either. He was completely trapped in Ding Ming's palm. Li Qingfeng let go of the sword in his shock and quickly retreated. "You don't want your sword anymore?" Ding Ming sneered as he pushed his palm forward, and the sword miraculously changed direction. At the same time, he shook his hands, and two faint blue blades shot out from his palms. This was the origin energy he had absorbed, and he was using the blazing sun battle runes to counterattack. The origin energy of a battle saint-level powerhouse wasn't something that could be absorbed immediately. It would require a long period of refinement before it could be digested. However, using it to counterattack was the best choice. Li Qingfeng could be considered to have some skills. As he retreated, he somersaulted and reached out his hand in midair. Not only did he avoid the sword, but he also grabbed the hilt. Then, he swung his sword twice to counterattack. The two blades were immediately shattered, turning into specks of light that dissipated in the air. Finally, he landed on the ground steadily. It had to be said that this reaction was very fast and correct. However, as soon as he landed on the ground, his pupils contracted. In less than 0.5 seconds, Ding Ming had disappeared from his sight. At this moment, Li Qingfeng's survival instincts were activated to the extreme. He didn't even have time to sense where Ding Ming had gone. He used all his strength to charge forward. He dared to say that this was the fastest he had ever run in his life. Unfortunately, he was too fast. Ding Ming's bewitching mirror's image had already taken the form of sword. It appeared right in front of him out of thin air. It felt as if he had delivered himself to the tip of the sword. Even in this kind of dangerous situation, Li Qingfeng was still able to react. As he ran, he elegantly turned his body sideways, and the sword almost brushed past his face. He could even feel the cold aura of death emanating from the sword. When he turned his body around again, Ding Ming's figure had already appeared right in front of him. There was no need to think too much about it. This was transient steps, the simplest and most basic martial skill. However, it was the most appropriate time to use it, because Li Qingfeng no longer had any room to maneuver. With a bang, Ding Ming's elbow viciously smashed into Li Qingfeng's face. This attack wasn't as simple as an elbow punch. It was a combination of origin energy, tremor force, explosive force, and penetrating force. Li Qingfeng's body was sent flying, as if he had been blasted by several invisible firecrackers. His nose was even bleeding from the impact. In the instant he was sent flying, he had already calculated the number of serious injuries on his body, especially the origin of his brain region, which had suffered a huge impact. At this moment, he couldn't care less. As he fell, he suddenly thrust his hand backwards. His goal was very clear. He was trying to use the sword in his hand to stab the ground and then support his body. It was also at this moment that he found himself flying again at an even more unbelievable speed. He was getting further and further away from the ground, as if he was flying towards the ceiling. Then he saw his body falling heavily onto the steel plate. However, this body no longer had a head, and blood spurted out from his neck like a fountain. Who am I? Where am I? This was Li Qingfeng's last thought. At this moment, all the lights in the hall went out with a click. Not only was the metal hall plunged into darkness, but the entire starship was also plunged into darkness and silence. Xi and Jia had completely defeated Dong Yu and Shi Wen and successfully regained control of the starship. Now, the mainframe system was rebooted. Once it was rebooted, the starship system would execute Xi and Jia's commands according to his password. In the darkness, Ding Ming gently waved his hand, and the catoptric deflection returned to his hand with a whoosh. His face was still expressionless. Although these three guys had died unjustly, the slash he had used to kill Li Qingfeng had indeed consumed a large amount of his origin energy and telekinesis. There was nothing special about that slash. It was just to mislead Li Qingfeng into thinking that he had dodged the attack, then break through his defenses with a punch. He had calculated that Li Qingfeng would try to find a way to stabilize himself on the ground. So before he landed, he had controlled the sword to turn around and cut off Li Qingfeng's head. At this moment, Xi and Jia and the others had finally returned from the 5th underground floor. There was one last thing they needed to do, and that was to head to the command center and take control of the starship. The metal hull was basically deformed. Clearly, it had been destroyed by Ding Ming and the others' battle. When they saw the corpses on the ground, Su Lingyue and the others immediately covered their mouths. They really had the urge to scream. These top experts of the God War Star Zone had been killed by Ding Ming alone. Moreover, they had died in such a pathetic and miserable manner. Ding Ming was still as calm as ever. Apart from his underwear, there were no wounds on his body. Lu Qing walked over. Even from the 5th underground floor, she could feel the area shaking, but she couldn't imagine how terrifying the battle above had been. Ding Ming, Lu Qing asked gently, "Are you okay?" Ding Ming shook his head. "You don't have to be so surprised." "Eh?" Su Lingyue couldn't help it. Even her voice was trembling. "Ding Ming, President Li and the others were all killed by you." Hearing this, Chu Xiaoqing's face turned cold. More than 500 brothers and sisters of my conqueror were all killed by them. His life is nothing. Xi and Jia also walked over with an equally serious expression. "Ding Ming, I have control of the starship again. However, if we want to start the starship, we have to go to the #1 command center." Ding Ming understood what he meant. If they wanted to leave the planet of extreme fire and go to the depths of the universe, Xi and Jia had to go to the #1 command center to complete the operation. Just now, he was stopping the people of the Alliance. Now, the situation was reversed. The remaining people of the Alliance would definitely stop them. We can't go back the way we came. Ding Ming quickly made a decision. Xing immediately said, "There are 3 ways to go." "Which 3?" Ding Ming asked. Chapter 543. Xing Yi said, "The first path is the main one, but if my guess is correct, they should be heavily guarded by soldiers right now." Ding Ming nodded. "We definitely can't take this path. It takes too much time." Xing Yi said, "We can take the side path of the holding cabins, but the route is slightly more complicated. This path could not be taken either, because Xi and Jia had already said Dong Yu and Shi Wen might be able to take back control again." Ding Ming said in surprise, "Oh." Xi and Jia said with a serious expression, "These two are not weak. After the mainframe system is rebooted, they can still use the method of cracking the system and counterattacking. It will just take some time." Ding Ming said, "How long will it take?" Xi and Jia said, "My initial estimate is 3 hours." 3 hours was not too long. For a statistician, it was just a matter of an instant. Xing Yi continued, "The last path is to take the side energy cabins. In theory, this is the safest path, but there is a problem. Near the energy cabins is Search and Rescue Port A03. That place is very spacious, and the chances of being discovered are also very high. It is very easy to be ambushed." Ding Ming fell in a deep thought. The problem was which of the 3 paths to choose. A moment later, Ding Ming said decisively, "Ding Ming, Miss Chu, Xing Yi, protect Xi and Jia and take the second path." He had chosen the most complicated path. There must be a deeper meaning behind this choice, so no one asked. Ding Ming continued, "The rest of you, follow me and take the third path." Xing Yi said worriedly. But the chances of encountering the third path are very high. Ding Ming said in a low voice, I want to encounter them. Why? Xing Yi did not understand. Ding Ming said, if I were them, I would choose to wait at search and rescue port A03. If I don't dare to take this path, I will lose in terms of momentum. Since we will encounter them sooner or later, it is better to encounter them sooner rather than later. Xing nodded. He obviously agreed with Ding Ming's idea. The most important thing now was time. As long as they could take control of the starship as soon as possible, they would be able to control the overall situation. Su Linghui couldn't help but ask, but didn't you kill Qing Zhongfeng by Jin Lai and Li Qingfeng? The higher-ups have suffered great losses. Wouldn't it be unsafe if we split up? You're wrong. Ding Ming glanced at her. The real enemy hasn't appeared yet. The real battle has only just begun. Search and rescue port A03 was a standard cylindrical smelting port. It was divided into 10 floors, and in the middle was a maintenance hall that covered an area of 80,000 square meters. To the Conqueror, the search and rescue port and the energy module were undoubtedly the most important locations. These two places were the core of the ship, because whether they could truly leave Planet Extreme Flame depended on the energy they had collected over the past 3 years. There were 3 transport ships and a Songqing exploration ship docked in the maintenance hall. Songqing's spaceship was docked in the center. Under the elevator of the spaceship's connecting cabin, there were 2 beautiful figures standing at the entrance. One was tall and graceful, the other was pure and otherworldly. Both of them had changed into tight-fitting black space armors. They were obviously prepared for battle. When they saw the two, Su Lingyue ran over with a cheer. Sister Shui, Sister Bai. Lin Aoshue's face was still solemn. It was hard to tell what she was thinking. However, Ding Ming realized that Shiwen wasn't there. That meant that he and Dong Yu were racing against time to decipher the code. With Dong Yu's ability, dealing with those two shouldn't be a problem. Seeing that Su Lingyue and Liang Yi had reached the ladder, Lin Aoshue slowly stepped forward and sighed. Qing, you and I have always called each other sisters. How many years have we known each other? Lu Qing said, Sister Shui, it's been more than 10 years. While I was at my most desperate, it was you who took me in. That's how I got to where I am today. Lin Aoshue's gaze was complicated. Qing, listen to me. Come over here and don't interfere. This has nothing to do with you. Lu Qing raised her guard. Sister Shui, you want to go after Ding Ming? Lin Aoshue shook her head. You're wrong. I'm not going after him. I'm saving everyone. Lu Qing didn't understand. Even Ding Ming was confused. Lu Qing couldn't help but sigh. Sister Shui, Ding Ming isn't a bad person. He doesn't mean any harm to us. He was the one who saved Xiao Yu and Sister Yi. Lin Aoshue stared at her. Qing, we don't have the right to stop you from liking someone, but I want to remind you not to be blinded by love. You can ask him now. Is he planning to go to the command center? There was no need to ask this question. Anyone, even if they used their buttocks to think, would know that Ding Ming wanted to take control of the Conqueror. Lin Aoshue turned to Ding Ming. It's impossible for you to use the starship to send a signal. Ding Ming frowned. What signal should I send? Lian Tingbai took 2 steps forward, her face cold. Ding Ming, stop pretending. You've been underground for 3 years. We believe that you've already come into contact with the core. Ding Ming asked, what core? Lian Tingbai's words were shocking. You've already got a lead on Mao Xing, so you must die. This time, not only were Ding Ming and Lu Qing shocked, even Little Rascal and Xiao AI were shocked. Little Rascal said, how does this girl know about Mao Xing? Xiao AI said in a serious tone, something's not right. Lu Qing was shocked for a moment before she recovered. She stepped forward and argued, Sister Shui, Sister Bai, please believe me. Ding Ming is on our side. Ding Ming also stepped forward to stop Lu Qing. His face was terrifyingly dark. How do you know about Mao Xing civilization? Lian Tingbai said proudly, that's none of your business. Lin Aoshue seemed to think that she had said too much. She waved her hand slightly to signal Lian Tingbai. Almost without warning, Lien Tingbai's figure seemed to blur. Ding Meng's expression turned cold. He quickly pushed Lu Qing aside and slashed at the air in front of him. Bang! The two enormous forces collided. Not only did the air tear apart, but countless sparks also exploded. This time, Ding Meng suffered a great loss. He slid backwards and hit the entrance door with his back. Xiao AI said in surprise, "Isn't the database showing that she's a champion? How did she suddenly erupt with the strength of a high-level battle monarch?" Little Rascal said in a serious tone, "I'm afraid it's more than that. Her combat index is over 900 million. She's no different from a battle saint." Lu Qing was pushed dozens of meters away by Ding Meng. The explosion almost made her lose her balance. She also looked at Lien Tingbai in shock. She didn't understand when the usually quiet and aloof Lien Tingbai had become so powerful. Ding Meng moved his wrist and sneered. "You still don't understand? They're the ones who are hiding the deepest." Lu Qing was dumbfounded. Lien Tingbai forced Ding Meng back with a single palm strike. She couldn't help but surge forward and push out with both palms. Her palm was covered in a layer of green plating. When she pushed her palm out, a lotus-shaped force field faintly appeared around Ding Meng. "Careful, she's most likely a biochemical or mutation type," Little Rascal said decisively. Sure enough, the force field spewed out a large amount of green smoke. Xiao AI also said, "It's harmful. It's a refined poison." Even though Ding Meng had the K virus, his skin felt sore and itchy as soon as it came into contact with the green smoke. One could only imagine how powerful the poison was. An ordinary person would have been burned to ashes. This time, Ding Meng didn't dare to be careless. He quickly activated the first 9 origins and pushed back Lien Tingbai's palm strike. However, halfway through, Lien Tingbai disappeared into thin air. Naturally, the wind generated by her palm strike mist and set fire to a steel plate on the wing of a transport ship in the distance. Right now, in the eyes of Su Lingyue and the others, Ding Meng was surrounded by a mass of dark green smoke. It was as if a tornado had surrounded him. It was as if a storm was raging. Not to mention them being surprised. Even Ding Meng himself was very surprised. This was a very basic martial skill, afterimage, but he had actually practiced afterimage to this extent. Countless doppelgangers were revolving around him, simply like a piece of cloth. He had truly achieved harmony. This was the first time Ding Meng had encountered an opponent like this. His telekinesis vision was also able to capture Lien Tingbai's real body. However, this Lien Tingbai's real body was changing too quickly. It didn't feel as if she was really fast. Instead, it felt as if she was using an additional technique. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that she was using a secret technique. After all, even telekinesis vision couldn't capture her real body. Was this Lin Aoshua's trump card? Ding Meng quickly thought about it. The poisonous fog around him was becoming thicker and thicker. Ding Meng also understood Lien Tingbai's train of thought. This woman who cultivated both light and light speed was much smarter than those idiotic presidents. She wanted to fight a long war of attrition. Ding Meng's eyes swept around again. Lin Aoshua hadn't moved, but Lu Qing had fallen to the ground at some point. Xiao AI immediately analyzed the data. Not good. She's been poisoned. She can't use her origin energy. Ding Meng took a deep breath and spread out his arms and legs. Bang! A powerful sound rang out. This time, he didn't hold back with the Overlord's mountain-crushing force. A ring of invisible air wave spread out, and all the clones were shattered. Ding Meng took a step forward and floated towards Lu Qing. At this moment, an indescribable pressure suddenly descended from the sky. It was obvious that this pressure was coming from the adamantium system. A golden force field that looked like a spinning top descended from the sky, instantly trapping Ding Meng within. Many strands of energy locked onto Ding Meng's joints. When he looked up again, he saw that Fong Ming had appeared at the entrance of the 3 arms. Even Little Rascal was shocked. How come our telekinesis vision didn't detect this person? This force field was abnormally powerful. The restrictive force caused Ding Meng to feel a faint pain in his bones. Xiao AI decisively warned, "Be careful of the left flank." Lian Tingbai had teleported 3 times in a row. A cold light flickered beneath her wrist. This was without a doubt a weapon. This time, Ding Ming felt that true danger had finally arrived. Chapter 544. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lian Tingbai's true body didn't move forward. Instead, 3 beams of cold light shot out from her wrist like 3 stars. They were extremely dazzling and extremely fast. Clang! Ding Ming hurriedly activated Diamond's star technique. The golden crown shield immediately lit up the hall and shattered Fong Ming's spinning top force field. However, Ding Ming had never imagined that the 3 bright stars Lian Tingbai had shot out would actually pass through the shield and hit Ding Ming's ribs. Ding Ming suddenly felt half of his body go numb. Little rascal exclaimed, "This is actually made with krypton gold." Xiao AI also exclaimed, "Quickly refine the mirror's surface. This weapon is poisonous. The cave virus can be cured." Ding Ming exerted a little force and forced the 3 bright stars out of his body. He looked down and saw 3 shiny flying needles lying on the ground. The needles were so thin that they were difficult to see with the naked eye. He really didn't expect them to be made with krypton gold. No wonder the crown shield couldn't block them. While Ding Ming was shocked, Lian Tingbai was even more shocked. This kid really was a monster. He took 3 needles and was completely fine. Die! Lian Tingbai's body flashed again and again as she used Flash Step to close in on Ding Ming. "You're courting death." This time, Ding Ming was truly enraged. After taking a deep breath, he once again increased the speed of the 9th origin. Now, it was operating at an even faster speed. In other words, he was using his trump card. Lian Tingbai decisively stopped halfway because Ding Ming had struck out with his palm. A powerful icy blue light had suddenly appeared from his palm, followed by a torrent of icy blue origin energy. It was like the Milky Way in the night sky, covering a large area and exuding a powerful aura. The giant Pang's Tide of Thousand Eyes could only be considered child's play compared to this. This was the most primitive form of origin energy release, a method that only beginner warriors could use. However, it was precisely because of this primitive form that Lian Tingbai had nowhere to hide. Ding Ming was so barbaric that he wanted to crush her with his unparalleled strength. Swish! A green lotus force field once again appeared around Lian Tingbai, and a shield and plating layer appeared on her body. She was pure and lovely to begin with, and now she was like a fairy within it, being tightly protected. Although the torrent of high temperature drowned her, her body only trembled slightly, and the luster of her force field and shield only slowly dimmed. Scram! Ding Ming roared, and the crown shield left his body. Surrounded by the torrent, the crown shield smashed into the opponent's force field like a hammer. As soon as the crown collided with it, the lotus force field immediately turned into nothingness. At the same time, the crown wrapped around Lian Tingbai's real body, sending her and her shield flying towards the distant transport ship. Boom! Rumble! Rumble! There were 3 consecutive earth-shattering explosions. Not only did the shield explode, but the transport ship was also blown into 2 halves. A large part of the 3 floors on the west side of the ship had collapsed. Flames and steel plates were flying everywhere. The entire rescue port was shaking, and the sun and moon had lost their light. Taking advantage of this chaos, Ding Ming quickly flashed to Lu Qing's side. She opened her hand and suddenly shook downwards. Dozens of drops of blood were flung out, and all of them were thrown onto Lu Qing's face. Only then did Lu Qing feel that her whole body was slowly recovering. However, at this moment, Ding Ming looked around again, and Fong Ming was nowhere to be found. Little Rascal said, "This is the Phantom of the Opera's secret scripture." Xiao AI said, "Shorten your telekinesis field of vision and use telekinesis strings to investigate. He still has nowhere to hide." Ding Ming took a deep breath and slowly extended his left claw. A moment later, he said decisively, Get the hell out here. He used telekinesis to scan the surroundings, and then used his telekinesis strings to bind Fong Ming, who was on the railing of the 5th floor. Then, with a gentle suction force, he was pulled down and strangled by the throat. Ugh! When Fong Ming's real body appeared, his face was already turning purple. However, Ding Ming's hand was like a pair of alloy pliers, and he couldn't breathe. Chen Huanyu's president has always been proficient in all kinds of techniques. I didn't expect him to be a battle saint. You guys really hid well. Ding Ming looked at him with a cold smile. It made sense that Fong Ming couldn't struggle. The moment he was strangled, Ding Ming released his origin body. I don't care if you're a toughening or quenching type. Once I catch you, you're dead. Let him go. Lin Aoshue didn't move until now. Finally, she said coldly, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. The death of the Norse Empire soldiers has nothing to do with him. Thud! Fong Ming fell to the ground like a dead dog, unable to move. When he fell, Su Lingwei and Liang Yi dragged the dying Lien Tingbai out of the bonfire. Lien Tingbai's entire body was burned, and she was barely breathing. Seeing this scene, Ding Ming became even angrier. These two were Lu Qing's sisters, and they were good at taking care of their enemies. However, Lu Qing was curled up on the ground with no one to help her. Ding Ming gently waved his hand, and Lu Qing was immediately pulled into the air. She floated to his side, and Ding Ming pulled her into his arms. Lu Qing raised her head and looked at Ding Ming gratefully. She could feel that Ding Ming's hand was pouring a large amount of origin energy into her waist. This was extremely pure origin energy. At the very least, it was the kind of origin energy that she had never seen before. Not only did it instantly heal her, but it also forcefully increased the speed of her origin. Now that they were facing a powerful enemy, Ding Ming had already expended a large amount of origin energy. Now, he was sacrificing origin energy to heal her. Lu Qing's eyes were a bit moist. Ding Ming, the two of them established a mental link once more. Ding Ming said, hurry up and leave. Go and meet up with Xinjie and the others. Lu Qing was puzzled. What about you? Ding Ming's eyes were fixed on Lin Aoshue. This is no longer a place where people of your level can stay. Not only will it be dangerous for you to stay here, but it will also be difficult for me to take care of you. Lu Qing hesitated. But the president, Ding Ming said, she's no longer your president. Don't ask why. Hurry up and leave. He was too lazy to explain. With a slight movement of his eyes, Lu Qing felt an invisible force carrying her to the entrance. Lu Qing turned around to look at Ding Ming, then at Lin Aoshue and the others. She gritted her teeth and turned around to leave. Lin Aoshue did not stop her. She looked very puzzled. You're actually willing to let her go? Ding Ming said. It should be said that you're actually willing to let her go. Lin Aoshue said, we sisters are as close as brothers. I've always hoped that she would find a good home, but I'm afraid that she'll get involved with someone like you. Ding Ming said in a low voice, then what kind of person do you think I am? Lin Aoshue said, you said that you're from Madison Star. Do you think that I haven't investigated you? Ding Ming said, I'm from the Holy Grail Federation. Lin Aoshue said, isn't it strange that you've come from so far away? Ding Ming was speechless. The reason why he had transmigrated from the Federation to the God War Starfield was not something that could be explained in a few words. Moreover, he could not say it in such a situation. Even if he said it, Lin Aoshue would not believe him. The cause and effect of this was too complicated. Lin Aoshue said, 4 years ago, you suddenly appeared in the God War Starfield as a person with no background. This is even stranger. Ding Ming still did not answer. Lin Aoshue continued, you went underground for 3 years. I have reason to believe that you're looking for clues about the Mao Xing civilization. Ding Ming frowned. Are you interested in the Mao Xing civilization too? Lin Aoshue said, it doesn't matter if I'm interested or not. What matters is that I need to know who is interested in these clues. Ding Ming said, so what? Lin Aoshue's voice became cold and harsh. Since you know, then you must die. At this moment, Ding Ming was shocked to find that the fires around the hall had been miraculously extinguished. The temperature of the surrounding air suddenly dropped at an unprecedented speed. Before, Ding Ming had only felt the temperature drop, but now the air had turned into a mist. His entire body instantly turned cold, and his blood flow slowed. His skin froze at a speed visible to the naked eye. Little Rascal cried out again, "Be careful, it's an ice element expert." Someone that Little Rascal called an expert could not be weak. Xiao AI also said the temperature is minus 168 degrees, and it's still dropping. Her origin energy index has broken through 3 billion points. She's definitely a mid-level battle saint. Ding Ming's heart continued to sink. Even if he had anticipated today's situation, he would never have imagined that the God Wars Alliance would have a battle saint expert. Moreover, this person was actually Lin Aoshue. Her disguise was too good. At this current temperature, not only was the air freezing, but even Ding Ming himself was frozen solid. He had completely turned into an ice sculpture. This ice was so hard that even mirror's reflection might not be able to pierce through it. You can't hold back any longer, Little Rascal reminded. You have to do your best to break through this. If she has any more tricks up her sleeve, we'll be in big trouble. Waves of white mist rose from the ice sculpture, and Ding Ming's true body was slowly revealed. However, at this moment, his hands and feet were extremely numb. Regardless of whether this was Lin Aoshue's frigid winter ice, dust storm, or dark ice energy, these were not things that could be recovered in a short period of time. Ding Ming's 9th origin was already operating at its limit. At this moment, his origin energy index was 27 billion points. Just from the index alone, it was hard to say whether or not he could beat Lin Aoshue. However, Lin Aoshue was even more shocked. She had not underestimated Ding Ming, but Ding Ming had once again refreshed her understanding of him. She shouted sternly, "You're not even 30 years old, but you already have the strength of a level 9 martial sage. Is this a normal human? If you say you're not an alien monster, then that's a lie." As she shouted, she opened her palms. Her palms pulled at the air, and a dot of light appeared at the center of her palms. The dot of light slowly expanded, forming a fist-sized light pupil. The white light pupil flew at an extremely slow speed toward Ding Ming. Its speed was really slow. Even walking at a normal pace would be faster than this. However, Ding Ming revealed an unprecedentedly serious expression. With his telekinesis vision, he could clearly see that with the light pupil as the center, the molecules in the air within 300 meters had practically stopped moving. This was practically the legendary absolute zero. He did not expect Lin Aoshue to use her ultimate move right off the bat. She was determined to kill him, the type that would destroy even his spirit body. This damned thing condensed from ice energy was not a light pupil at all. It was clearly a domain of death. No matter who entered its range, they would immediately be frozen for eternity until the end of time. Chapter 545. As soon as Lin Aoshue unleashed her ultimate technique, Ding Ming didn't dare to be careless. He quickly slashed out with his hand. This time, the origin energy blade light that shot out was almost completely purple. This was the origin energy flames that he had refined step by step during his 3 years on Planet Extreme Flame. Battles between ice and fire had always been simple and crude. It was a competition of whose foundation was deeper. However, when the blade light entered the sphere of light, it was like mud sinking into the ocean. It didn't even cause the slightest ripple. It was like a black hole that could absorb all matter in its surroundings. Little Rascal said in surprise, "This isn't origin energy projection, nor is it a martial skill. It's definitely a secret technique. Where did she get it from?" Xiao AI said, "A single martial skill won't work. The temperature of this sphere of energy is still dropping. We need to keep attacking it." Ding Ming gritted his teeth. He clasped his hands together and placed them at his waist. After taking a deep breath, he suddenly pushed forward. This time, not only did he push forward with the origin energy that he had accumulated from the previous 9 points, but he also used the rainbow origin essence stored in the smelting space. What he pushed forward was no longer as simple as a flood of energy. Instead, it was like a black beam of light. On the other side of the eye of light was a frozen world, but on the other side of the black beam of light was a world of flames, a world of flames. When the two completely different energies collided, a watery screen appeared in the center of the hall. It split the entire space of the rescue port in half, and large amounts of shockwaves and water vapor shot out in every direction. This was obviously a critical origin energy mirror created by the combination of ice and fire. This kind of special energy that could only be created inside the human body had actually taken form in the real world. Boom, 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 boom. The ground exploded, the floors exploded, and the ceiling exploded. The entire rescue port was being squeezed, twisted, and deformed. At this moment, the hall was in complete chaos. However, the critical origin energy mirror continued to move toward Ding Ming. The power of Lin Aoshua's ice type was actually greater than that of Ding Ming's origin energy. This little rascal was dumbfounded. This can't be right. This is impossible. Xiao AI said, "We can't let that ice ball come close. Once it gets within 50 meters, we'll all be frozen." Ding Ming was fully aware of the power of the ice element. The true strength of the ice element lay in its ability to freeze. Under extreme temperatures, what would be frozen wasn't just the limbs, movement, blood, strength, origin energy, and so on. More importantly, it would slow down one's reaction and blur one's consciousness. That feeling was like a person who was about to fall asleep. No matter how hard you tried, your eyes were slowly closing. Once your consciousness was frozen and your will disappeared, you wouldn't be able to use your strength no matter how strong you were. Ding Ming let out an angry roar and pushed his palms forward again. The origin essence within the smelting space immediately poured out, and the black origin energy beam immediately turned white. The critical value mirror directly turned into a layer of blue ice about 10 meters thick. The ice layer was slowly pushed back, and the pupil of light was gradually shrinking. Although the speed of shrinking was very slow, it was clear that Ding Ming had gained the upper hand in this attack. Lin Aoshua's eyes were bloodshot. "Don't even think about getting your way." She spread her arms and legs, and her entire body shook violently. A silver river actually appeared between her and the pupil of light. The turbulent ice energy within the river howled as the pupil of light expanded once again, and the layer of ice began to move toward Ding Ming once more. This little rascal was stunned. Lin Aoshua was actually this powerful? Her foundation was simply too frightening. "No!" Xiao AI immediately spoke up. "She's using her own strength to harm him. I don't know what kind of secret technique she's using, but I'm certain that she's using two high-level secret techniques." Ding Ming could also sense that even though Lin Aoshua's attack was stronger than his, she was already very weak. The aura she was exuding had already dropped to the level of a combat master. In other words, Lin Aoshua had basically poured the majority of her origin energy into the pupil of light. She no longer cared about her own life. Ding Ming seemed to have been influenced by her determination to fight to the death. Just as he was about to activate his 10th origin, he suddenly received a message from Lu Qing. "Ding Ming, XING, I want me to tell you something. I don't know what's going on over there, but if you're fighting, then the scale of your battle is too large. The shockwaves will affect the energy module next to you. This is a critical moment, and the starship hasn't been activated yet. For safety's sake, don't affect the energy module." "Forget it," Ding Ming sighed. He slowly retracted his palms and decisively raised his right arm. The spatial divine light began to circulate, and his right arm immediately turned into a glowing Qilin arm. The divine light gauntlet transformed into a white, slender sword of light. When Lin Aoshua saw this sword of light, it was as if she had seen a terrifying demon. She was so stunned that she even forgot to channel origin energy from her palms. A second later, Ding Ming's entire body became incomparably white. Together with his sword, he transformed into a stream of white energy that resembled a thin veil. This was Mao Xing's divine skill, Wings of Light. The thin veil pierced through the layer of ice and transformed back into Ding Meng's image. Ding Meng had revealed his true body for safety reasons. He didn't believe that someone as powerful as Lin Aoshua wouldn't have any tricks up her sleeve. Thus, Ding Meng used the carp leaping through the dragon's gate and swung his sword backward. This move of his had already reached the pinnacle of perfection. Even if his opponent had a trick up her sleeve, he would still have room to parry it. As soon as the divine light gauntlet was unleashed, the entire area was overflowing with white light. The sharp tip of the sword slashed toward Lin Aoshua as fast as lightning. This kind of weapon was definitely not something that an ordinary human could block. However, the most incomprehensible scene occurred. Lin Aoshua didn't put up any defense at all. Her entire body seemed to have relaxed, and just as the tip of the sword was about to reach her, the corner of her mouth actually revealed a trace of a smile. It was a smile of relief that one's wish had been fulfilled. She seemed to have given up all hope. She was already prepared to die. Rip! The sound of the weapon cutting through flesh was particularly ear-piercing. Lin Aoshua fell heavily to the ground, lying in a pool of blood. The divine light gauntlet didn't pierce through her heart because Ding Meng had stopped. Even so, Lin Aoshua's entire right leg had been cut off. After Ding Meng landed, he slid back several meters before he could steady himself. His face was gloomy, and there was no trace of pride in his victory over a powerful enemy. His heart was sinking. He felt as if he had stepped on a skyscraper and had fallen into a cold abyss. Sister Shui, Sister Shui. In the distance, Su Lingyue cried and ran over to help the dying Lin Aoshua up. Su Lingyue was standing the furthest away, so she wasn't affected much. Perhaps Lin Aoshua had considered their sisterly relationship before she attacked, so she didn't let the energy of the ice family affect everyone present. Liang, he was curled up on the ground with only a thin layer of ice on his body. Not far away, Lin Tingbai was lying on the ground, seemingly lifeless. Su Lingyue's face was covered in tears. She looked at Ding Meng and said in a hoarse voice, "Ding Meng, how could you be so cruel? Sister Shui saved Lu Qing from the brink of death. How could you do this?" Lin Aoshua struggled to sit up. Her voice was trembling. "Xiaoyu, we should thank him." Su Lingyue was stunned. "Sister Shui, what are you talking about?" Lin Aoshua heaved a long sigh. "If it weren't for Mr. Ding Meng stopping in time, even my spirit body would have been destroyed." Su Lingyue looked at Lin Aoshua's disheveled hair and then at Ding Meng's expressionless face. She couldn't figure out what was going on. Lin Aoshua's face was full of disappointment. She said in a depressed tone, "I was wrong about this. I made a mistake." Ding Meng slowly turned around and put away the divine light wristband. "You've come into contact with the Mao Xing civilization?" It was normal for him to ask this question. He had stopped in time because of Lin Aoshua's sudden smile. If she was really Ding Meng's enemy, she wouldn't have smiled like that. Lin Aoshua said, "I've never seen this weapon of yours, but I've heard of it." Ding Meng frowned. "Oh," Lin Aoshua sighed. "When I was still a spirit weapon wielder, my master told me about the Mao Xing civilization. It was a god-level civilization in the universe, but it was destroyed a long time ago. However, it wasn't truly destroyed. Some of its remaining power drifted to our star field. They exist in all kinds of ways that we can't imagine and have established connections with our civilization and many other races." Ding Meng listened quietly. Lin Aoshua knew even more than him and Little Rascal. "Your weapon is a Mao Xing weapon. Only a Mao Xing warrior can wear it," Lin Aoshua said with certainty. Ding Meng muttered, "You seem to know a lot about the Mao Xing civilization." Lin Aoshua sighed even more heavily. "My master has always been protecting the remaining power of the Mao Xing civilization." "Oh," Ding Meng was surprised. "Why?" Lin Aoshua said, "Because although the remaining power of the Mao Xing civilization has come to our star field, the enemies of the Mao Xing civilization have also followed. They exist in all kinds of ways that we can't imagine. My mission is to stop the enemy from searching. Ding Ming knew very well what the enemy was searching for. It was the Mao Xing civilization's Holy Palace map. Lin Aoshue said, "Your appearance makes me think of the god and demon race." God and demon race? Ding Ming frowned. Little Rascal nodded. Yes, the god and demons are the enemies of the Mao Xing civilization. They rely on the four-dimensional space, and their technology and magic are abnormally powerful. They're not something that humans can contend against. Ding Ming was surprised. There's really such a thing as magic? Little Rascal let out a long sigh. The universe is so big. Nothing is impossible. Lin Aoshue continued. My master told me that although the god and demons are powerful, they are not willing to come to our three-dimensional world. This is because if they really want to come, they have to reduce their dimensions and modify themselves. That way, their strength will be greatly reduced. Ding Ming said, "Can I understand it this way? I came to the God War Star Field from the Holy Grail Federation. Starting from Madison, Azure Tree, Rainbow Star, and Extreme Flame Star, all of these events made you think that I'm a member of the god and demon race?" Lin Aoshue said, "What do you think?" Ding Ming couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he were Lin Aoshue, he would probably suspect that he was a member of the god and demons. He was not even 30 years old, but he had erupted with the power of a battle saint. He was adventuring and causing trouble everywhere. His background was so suspicious. If he wasn't a member of the god and demons, what else could he be? Chapter 546. Lin Aoshue gasped for breath. I've been suspecting you ever since you came back from the Rainbow Galaxy. Lu Qing and the others' memories were all broken, and Shiwen's report was also incomplete. You, on the other hand, came back alive from the Rainbow Galaxy, but you didn't mention anything about the Rainbow Galaxy. I have reason to believe that you're hiding an even greater secret. Ding Ming looked at her. But you're still not completely sure, right? Lin Aoshue said, that's why Planet Extreme Flame became the final testing ground. Not only did you and Xing's group land successfully, you even went deep underground. Ding Ming pondered and said, so, just in case, you stole the starship and took control of Miss Chu and the others. Lin Aoshue gritted her teeth and said, I didn't want to do something so despicable and shameless, but to prevent you from coming back alive, I had no choice but to agree to Dong Yu's plan. Ding Ming's expression was thoughtful. It seems I've misunderstood you. Lin Aoshue said, who would have thought that you would actually come back alive? I don't know how many levels you went under Planet Extreme Flame, but it was at least 50 levels below. The fact that you were able to come back alive from such depths is enough to prove that you're not an ordinary person. As for whether or not you found any clues about the Mao Xing civilization, that's not important because you're a dead man to me. Ding Ming understood her thoughts. She would rather kill 1,000 innocent people than let any suspicious person go. Why are you protecting the secrets of the Mao Xing civilization? Ding Ming couldn't help but ask. Lin Aoshue sighed and said, my ancestors were indebted to the Mao Xing civilization and swore an oath to protect the clues of the Mao Xing civilization from falling into the hands of the gods and demons. This oath has been passed down generation after generation, and my generation is no exception. This situation was extremely similar to the inheritance of Hero's Dagger. Little Rascal couldn't help but sigh inwardly. There was nothing wrong with protecting the secret of the Holy Sanctum's map, but was it worth it to sacrifice so many people to protect the secret? This was the question she had been thinking about ever since she awakened, and it was also a question she had never thought about before. Lin Aoshue sighed and said, until you showed me the Mao Xing weapon, I knew that you were not from the gods and demons. The gods and demons could not control the Mao Xing weapon. Our ancestors said that the Mao Xing weapon could only be controlled by someone with a special opportunity. That was why I knew that I was wrong. Ding Ming had stopped at the last moment, which was enough to show that he was not an enemy. Otherwise, Lin Aoshue would have been reduced to nothingness by now. Then what is the transmission signal you mentioned? Ding Ming asked again. Lin Aoshue said, "The divine demons desperately want to know the specific location of Mao Xing's remaining forces. They will use the starship to open a space-time tunnel and send signals in the four-dimensional space. Currently, only the Supreme can do this. Of course, the Conqueror can do this now." Ding Meng suddenly asked, "Who initiated the construction of the Paragon?" Lin Aoshue said, "It was jointly initiated by the Crusade Army and the Void Alliance." Ding Meng said expressionlessly, "But I have killed Qing Zhongfeng, and I believe that Dong Yu has become a corpse by now." Lin Aoshue said suspiciously, "Do you think that the divine demons are hiding in our divine war alliance?" Ding Meng shook his head. "I just have a feeling that if I were from the divine demons and could not enter this main star system, I would find a way to train a spokesperson to help me gather information. This person would be best if he or she was a member of the human race." Lin Aoshue also agreed with this statement because the human race might be the lowest race, but they were also the most complicated race. The human heart was something that could not be underestimated at any time. At this time, the system on the starship finally sounded. "Attention all crew members, attention all crew members. This starship will lift off in 10 minutes and 30 seconds. All units, please prepare for liftoff." Repeat, repeat. Her voice was still as sweet as ever, but Ding Meng and Lin Aoshue's eyelids twitched upon hearing her words. Both of them had a bad premonition. This was purely an expert's intuition towards potential danger. The two of them had encountered each other in this search and rescue port, and had even gotten into a fight. After an unknown amount of time, Ding Meng suddenly let out a long sigh. His whole body relaxed. "I understand now." Lin Aoshue frowned. "What's going on?" Ding Meng said, "This is not a coincidence. It is inevitable." Lin Aoshue still did not understand what he was saying. This time, Ding Meng used his origin energy to speak. "I've always felt that it was strange. I kept feeling like there was someone missing from this place. Now, it seems that there is no one missing. You've been here all this time." Lin Aoshue was shocked. She spread out her perception all around her. Only then did she discover that a figure had appeared at the railings of the fourth floor at some unknown time. This person was like a ghost, appearing without a sound. This was the most terrifying thing about this person. Even with Ding Meng and Lin Aoshue's high level of strength, they had not been able to sense this person's presence before. From this, it could be seen that this person's strength was even more unfathomable. A middle-aged man stood proudly on the railings of the fifth floor. He was short and thin, and he wore a black suit with a black windbreaker draped over it. With a leap, his entire body actually floated down from above, landing firmly on a pile of rubble. It was as if an invisible wind had carried him down. "Little rascal said, he also cultivates telekinesis, but I don't know what type it is." Xiao AI said in a low voice, "Ding Meng, be careful. I can't analyze his data." Ding Meng nodded. Not only could Xiao AI not analyze it, but even he himself could not sense the depths of this person's power. Lin Aoshue said in surprise, "So it's you?" "It's me." The person who had come was none other than Sheng Tianfeng, the honorable merit of the Holy War. He looked no different from his usual self. He walked very steadily with his hands behind his back, exuding a dignified aura. At the same time, he wore a gentle smile on his face. "You've all done well and completed your respective missions. Now that the starship has taken off, it's time for everything to come to an end." Every time this happened, Ding Meng would actually calm down. He suddenly smiled. "After working so hard for half a day, it turns out that everyone has become your chess pieces." Sheng Tianfeng looked at him with great interest. "Little friend Ding Meng, I've suddenly discovered that I'm very interested in you. I really want to hear your opinion." Ding Meng smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid that I won't be able to say it accurately. I can only guess." Sheng Tianfeng stared at him like a knife. "Even if you have to guess it for me." Ding Meng said in a low voice, "According to the data, you were the 5th commander of the Holy War Army. When you were the commander, the joint plan had just begun to be implemented. You were one of the important initiators. After the alliance was established, you retired. It is said that it was more than 200 years ago. Sheng Tianfeng said seriously, "It was 237 years ago." Ding Ming said, 237 years ago, you were a martial artist. The Holy War Army was at its peak. You were also the commander at that time. It could be said that your future was limitless. However, you chose to retire when you were at the peak of your power. Sheng Tianfeng smiled. Is there a problem? Ding Ming said in a low voice. Perhaps you learned about the Mao Xing civilization and the celestial demon clan at that time. Yes. Sheng Tianfeng did not deny it. There are not many things that can attract me. Ding Ming said, what could interest you at that time was definitely not fame, because you were already the undisputed #1 person in the Holy War Alliance. You were admired by countless people. Fame and fortune may be a burden to you. Sheng Tianfeng smiled. Please continue. Ding Ming said tentatively. For a psionicist, cultivation and beauty may be more important. At that time, as long as I was willing, countless women would flock to me. Sheng Tianfeng waved his hand, but his tone was somewhat gloomy. It's a pity that the best women were not mine. Ding Ming continued, the conditions that the celestial demons promised you are not that simple, right? Sheng Tianfeng smiled again. The benefits that the celestial demon clan gave me are something that you people can never imagine. Lin Aoshua listened to the conversation between the two, and her heart turned cold for a moment. She could not help but say angrily, Sheng Tianfeng, you are the commander of the Holy War Army, a hero of a generation. I did not expect that you would end up as a lackey of the celestial demon clan. Sheng Tianfeng was not angry, and his smile was still gentle. Aoshua, you don't understand. Sometimes being a dog is much more fun than being a human. Lin Aoshua gritted her teeth and said, instead of being a human, you chose to be a dog. Sheng Tianfeng laughed. Aoshua, you think you are a human. Then let me ask you, has it been hard for you all these years? Lin Aoshua said angrily. So what if it has been hard? I have a clear conscience. Sheng Tianfeng's smile became strange. Well, let me tell you, your hard work all these years was given to you by me. Lin Aoshua frowned. What do you mean? Sheng Tianfeng paced back and forth on the ruins with his hands behind his back. Only then did he slowly open his mouth. Back then, I accidentally came into contact with the celestial demons, and today's events were already brewing. Ding Ming was also interested. Commander Sheng Tianfeng is so far-sighted. Can you predict what will happen 200 years later? Sheng Tianfeng smiled modestly. Little friend Ding Ming is too modest. Although I was the commander of the Holy War Army at that time, my personal strength was not worth mentioning. Little rascal said in surprise, it is very likely that he has been secretly cultivating the celestial demons after abdicating. Ding Ming nodded. Yes, if you want to help the celestial demons search for traces of Mao Xing, you must first train your own strength. This is only one of the aspects. Sheng Tianfeng snapped his fingers. Interstellar navigation technology is another aspect. Ding Ming frowned and said, that's right. After you are strong enough, interstellar navigation technology will become an obstacle because you can't reach other planets. Space jumps are out of the question. If my guess is correct, the excessive consumption of energy in the Heavenly Wars planet's ring is not really caused by excessive consumption, but by someone else. Sheng Tianfeng looked at Ding Ming with a hint of admiration in his eyes. As expected of the martial artist of Mao Xing, you can actually think of this. Lin Aoshua looked at Sheng Tianfeng in shock. How did you consume celestial wars, star rings, technological energy? Sheng Tianfeng smiled. It's very simple. I smelted it. Lin Aoshua said doubtfully. You can smelt such a huge amount of energy? Sheng Tianfeng laughed. Aoshua, you don't have to play dumb in front of me, because you are also secretly smelting energy. Do you think I don't know about the diamond star melting art that your master taught you? Puff! The divine light thorn didn't miss this time. At the same time of impact, the light thorn pierced into Heaven-Dominating Peak's left chest. Heaven-Dominating Peak was pushed against the crystal plate on the side wall of the passage by Ding Ming. Ding Ming knew that at least 5 of Heaven-Dominating Peak's ribs were broken. With the light thorn's attack, even if Heaven-Dominating Peak didn't die, he would be severely injured. The Katopter deflection sword on his waist automatically separated and quickly turned into a long sword, stabbing towards Towering Heaven Peak's throat. With a clang, the sword stabbed into Towering Heaven Peak's neck, but it felt like it had stabbed into a steel plate. It didn't budge at all. Towering Heaven Peak laughed again. "You want to hurt me with a human weapon? Naive." While he was laughing, he exerted more strength in his claws. Ding Ming's feet had already left the ground, and his face had turned purple. This half-human, half-demon freak was so strong that even he couldn't break free from it. In the midst of this crisis, a white light suddenly flashed. This wasn't a true white light, but rather a soft stream of light. It quickly burrowed into Towering Heaven Peak's forehead like a gentle smoke. Little Rascal cried out in alarm. "Are you crazy? You want to melt him?" Xiao AI was also scared out her wits. "Come out." Towering Heaven Peak's expression changed. He let go of Ding Ming and slammed his palm onto Ding Ming's forehead. This time, Ding Ming was sent flying again. Towering Heaven Peak realized that the stream of light burrowing into his forehead was quite dangerous. His entire body trembled as he roared, "Get out!" Just this roar alone was enough to make the entire tunnel tremble. Countless steel plates fell off, and many light sources were extinguished. The tunnel was pitch black. In the darkness, the stream of light was indeed forced out of his body. The humanoid figure half knelt not far away and revealed its true form. It was the Civil Protector. The water droplet's thoughts were crazier than anyone else's. First of all, if Ding Ming died, then it would die with him. Second of all, while the two sides were fighting, if it could fuse with someone as ferocious as Towering Heaven Peak, then wouldn't it soar to the heavens? However, craziness was also based on strength. Although the water droplet had absorbed Giant Pang's origin energy, the energy of an intermediate combat lord in front of Towering Heaven Peak was like a dragonfly trying to shake a pillar. Kelvin's spore life form? Towering Heaven Peak glanced at the water droplet in disdain. Such an inferior trash race that only knows how to absorb energy. It doesn't have any ability of its own. It can't even compare to a weak human. Trash. The water droplet was quite angry. This was what it was most angry about. How could a spore life form be inferior to a human? The Civil Protector once again turned into a stream of light. The stream of light wielded its blade and charged towards Towering Heaven Peak. "I'll beat you back to your original form." Towering Heaven Peak sneered disdainfully. He swept his palm across the air, and a black solid palm wind swept through everything. It could be seen that the water droplet couldn't even get close to him. The stream of light seemed to have been hit by a huge wave, and it was completely disintegrated in the torrent.